Good evening, everybody. We're going to go on ahead and call this meeting to order. This is Thursday, September 13th. It is the Police Oversight Board, and let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. The mission of the Police Oversight Board is advancing constitutional policing and accountability for APD and the Albuquerque community. Chair Waits had a family emergency. He is hoping to join us later in this meeting, but if he doesn't, he sends his apologies. Can I get an approval of the agenda?
I move we approve the agenda.
Can I have a second? And a second. Any discussion? We're approving the agenda.
Okay. I guess I'm making a motion then to table indefinitely item, is that item 5?
I think it's 9. Item
9, section B, stipends. And I'm making, sorry, can I have a second for the motion?
I second.
All in favor? Aye. Aye. Any opposed? Great.
Additionally, I'm making a motion that we defer to the next agenda, item 9, section A, Police Oversight Board Policy and Procedure.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. So then with those changes, can I have an approval of the agenda?
I want to make sure that the things Chelsea, that you wanted on the agenda, did they make it? There were things we discussed?
I'm really not sure. It's not clear to me. Well,
if you're not interested in pursuing this, then I'm fine, but I just want to make sure that we don't skip over that and then not be able to cover it on the agenda.
I don't have very much clarity over whether my agenda items are on the agenda or not.
You
the
don't
way that
really see them?
Well, the way that I provided them to the chair, it doesn't stand out to me that what I provided is on here, although, it's been argued that it is on here in different forms, and so I would need some clarity regarding, for example, it's possible that item, where is it?
Is it possible
90.
that if after we get to the end of the agenda, your items aren't sufficiently represented, we can at least discuss? Oh, I'm so sorry. I apologize. This would probably help too. Is it possible that under other business, we could at least have a discussion about items that may have been missing? Is that possible?
As far as I'm concerned, I think so. I think that the change that I would recommend is under item 9D, rather than it say an update on use of force and specify 252, that we just say update on use of force.
I like that.
And be able to have that discussion there for at least that one point.
Okay.
So I move that we change update on use of force 252, which was never intended, to just say use of force.
And can we amend her motion to include that?
I think that that's first the motion, right? And we need to make that okay and then approve the agenda with those changes?
Yeah.
As a whole?
Oh, that's what I was
So I'm going to move that we make that change.
I second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. Any other changes to the agenda that we see immediately? Okay, so then can I make a motion that we approve the agenda with the changes discussed?
So moved.
And a second?
I second.
Okay, and all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. We're going to open up the floor to public comment. Just a reminder, comments are limited to 3 minutes each, and we are going to keep this civil. So first up, Mr. Tenenbaum. Thank you, sir.
Good evening. Thank you for your time and your public service. For quite some time now, I've been meaning to come down here, demonstrate my support for the Police Oversight Board, and thank the board members for your hard work and dedication. I wanted to basically thank you and also address a couple of issues of concern. You're better people than I am. I've never had much tolerance for meetings. I can't stand meetings. And I'm reminded of the expression, the definition of a camel is a horse designed by committee. In this city, for example, I think we'd be better served if the city council had 4 district councilors, 1 for each quadrant of the city, and 3 councilors at large, or perhaps 1 councilor at large. But in terms of organizational culture, I've gone to a lot of city council meetings during the past 10, 15 years. It has gotten to the point where I'm literally nauseated when I walk into this building. Part of it stems from familiarity breeding contempt, I will admit. But the city council and a lot of their subordinates seem to have a sense of entitlement. Not all, but many have a sense of entitlement. I know that it came up during a recent POB meeting about government workers feeling uncomfortable, as though making a government worker feel uncomfortable is a crime. I've gotten that distinct impression that public servants have somehow adopted a mindset that they are the elite and that citizens are second class. A couple things that also the city council does things in an underhanded manner a lot of times. I know that came up at a POB meeting recently also. So the Police Oversight Board is supposed to be independent of the executive branch of government and the legislative branch. Under the auspices of the Civilian Police Oversight Agency, the Police Oversight Board should be entirely independent. It's a force of its own, and I'm glad to see the board really taking action. And although it's not supposed to be political, there will be politics involved. So I wanted to address the CPOA director contract renewal that was deferred by the city council. In my perception, this was a rather underhanded move by making a motion for deferral during the meeting that precluded any open discussion or debate about the matter. Perhaps the incentives and bonuses proposed or recommended by the board members might have complicated a simple matter a little bit. But I think the renewal of the director's contract should be something that's not interfered with by either the city council or the mayor's office. And the recommendations of the board members should be put through. There could be a lot of reasons offered why the city council wouldn't just go ahead and do what the board recommended should be done.
Thank you, Mr. Tenenbaum. We really appreciate your opinions and being here to voice them. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And next we've got Rowan, is it Weimark? Yeah. Okay.
Good evening, board members, and let me briefly, before I speak, add my full support for Mr. Harness. As you may or may not know, I spoke in the council of my disappointment and my full approbation of Mr. Harness and the job he's doing. I'm standing on tiptoes, so I'll get it down a little further. I think that will work. The reason I've come to you tonight is because I've had 2 incidents. I'm chair of the Valley CPC, by the way. I've had 2 incidents of people coming to me that have been indirectly or directly exposed to some kind of criminal activity. One woman had her house broken into, and another woman was dealing with a rather dangerous mentally ill person on her block. Both times when the police came, they did exactly what they were supposed to do. I mean, they did a good job. Where they fell down was explaining to the people that had called them why exactly what they were doing, the way they were doing it, And so the two people that came to me were really indignant and upset that the situation hadn't been adequately explained to them, that they couldn't do in the case of the mentally ill gentleman. It's got to be a more political correct way of saying that, I'm sorry. Why they didn't say, all they said is, we can't take him. We can't take him into custody. And they couldn't fully go into it. And in both and the other woman, she was, frantically upset, and she wanted to tell them what had been stolen, and she was just, you know how it is when your house gets broken into. And it sounds like they just basically were kind of cold and said, we don't do that. That's not what we do. And I know in this particular incident, the woman has contacted you and spoken to the commander of the Valley Area Command. The other lady was from the Southeast Area Command, so I spoke to Commander Griego of the Southeast Area Command, and I asked for his email, and I sent his email to the woman that had spoken to me and said, go ahead and email him with your consent. She said, oh, I'm not sure that, I don't feel comfortable doing that. And this other woman had been, I got in touch with everyone. And I suspect, I could be wrong, that these are recent academy graduates, and so they know what to do, but they just don't know how to completely interact with these people and put them at their ease. They've received, because I did it myself, the CIT training, and I know they have received, we're done. Can I just finish my sentence? They have received excellent training in how to interact in disturbing situations. And I've seen them in, what are they called? In the situations, the mock situations.
Right.
But I don't think, and actually when I spoke to Commander Olvera, he said he didn't think that they'd received adequate training in just what they do when they respond to criminal calls.
That is the best suggestion. That what you just said is the best suggestion, which is that training is the solution for that. And feedback on interactions helps to create the training that the Academy does. So I would say that in the future, if you run into that, and even with these two women that you visited with, I would suggest to them that they explain this in some form of a letter, saying that they hope, they're not talking about the incident itself, but to say it would really be great if the training included some perspective on this from the victim side. So, from
Commander
the...
Olvera did say that, and may I just say, it's the first time I've been called the best at anything. Well, not the first, but it's very nice. And the other thing is that as the Valley CPC, we're planning to make a recommendation.
Oh, that's great.
To that
That's
effect.
even better. That's
Thank
great.
you very much.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you for your participation this evening. We appreciate you. Okay, moving on to agenda item 6, the review and approval of the minutes. Has everybody had an opportunity to review your minutes from our last meeting?
Yes.
Do we have any changes to the minutes from, and this is going to be from the Thursday, August 9th meeting?
Yeah, the regular board
Right.
meeting.
I know. Yeah, thank you. No changes? May I have a motion to approve the meeting minutes from Thursday, August 9th?
I so move.
Okay, any seconds? Or a second, please?
I second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Wonderful. Let's move on to the August 24th special board meeting. Do we have any changes to those minutes? Okay, can I have a motion to approve the August 24th minutes?
I move to approve the August 24th minutes.
May I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Reports from city staff. Do we have somebody here from APD? We do. Thank you.
Did we finish all of the
I'm sorry,
comments?
excuse me, we did.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Good evening, Madam Vice Chair Galloway and members of the board. My name is Mike Miller. I'm from APD Internal Affairs, and I'm just here to present the data for the month of August. In terms of the calls for service that the Albuquerque Police responded to, For August of 2018, there were 45,338 calls for service. And this is actually an increase from July of about 1,186 calls for service. For APD Internal Affairs, we had 6 cases that were completed within Internal Affairs. One of those cases was administratively closed. And out of those cases, the following discipline was imposed. There was 1 letter of reprimand, and that's for use of force. There was 1 suspension for on-body recording device, and there was also 1 termination for conduct. In terms of our early intervention system, we had 81 alerts that were issued throughout the department. And currently, IA has 19 cases that are pending for investigation. And of those 19, 6 are new that were opened in August. Madam Vice Chair, I stand for any questions.
Are the pending cases, does that include the backlog? Do you know?
Vice Chair Galloway.
Oh, those are for investigations, not for,
So,
Yeah.
Member Fine, that's actually for the Force Division.
Okay.
This is APD Internal Affairs misconduct, but, so that does not include any of those numbers.
gotcha. Thank you.
Yes, on body recording, I'm just curious as to what fraction of time when there is an officer-citizen interaction is our on-body cameras turned on? I mean, do you have, I'd just like some clarification on that. It's a neutral question. I'm just trying to get more information about that. And so could you enlighten me, please?
Yes, sir. Vice Chair Galloway, Member Dr. Cass, I actually don't have any of that information available at this point, but more often than not, the on-body recording devices are being used now. We are seeing very little cases that still have that issue with the recording devices. However, it still is happening. But I can definitely try to get you some of that information if you would like and have it for the next meeting.
But you think that most of the time they're being used? I mean, meaning 2/3 of the time, or
I'd say greater than that, sir.
90% of the time?
Yes, sir. The department has had a strong influence of making sure that the officers are using these recording devices. They've actually recently taken, each officer was originally issued 2. So we've taken those 2 recording devices, excuse me. We've taken them from all the inside detectives, so they only have 1, and we're actually reallocating them to the field so that there's extra ones out there in case one breaks down or something happens with it. So there's been a real strong focus of making sure everyone's equipped with it, that they know how to use it, they know when to use it, and that they are using it. And if they're not, they're being held accountable for it.
One more. I have one more question.
Thank you.
My question is about the number of calls dispatched for service. It shows an increase. Now, it's not a high percentage increase, but it's a lot of calls. I wondered if there was a time of year where there's more calls, or is there some thread that you can say, this is why we got more calls this month?
Vice Chair Galloway, Member Fine, always when we have the summer months that come up, we always see an increase for the calls for service, as well as normally into the latter half of the summer as well. You know, the kids are going back to school, but there's still a lot of activity that's going on. People are still outside. And we usually see the increase going through the summer months, usually peaking around September, and then we'll see the curve going down a little bit towards the winter months.
So as it's compared to July of last year, August compared to July, did you expect that would be about right, 1,000 more? Or is there some other factor besides it being summer, in your guess?
Vice Chair Galloway and Member Fine, there's so many different influences on it. It's
Okay.
really hard to pinpoint it right now, but we haven't seen anything specifically that I've noticed that's leaning towards that increase in calls for service.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? I may have one if you don't mind. With regards to your use of force question, is that something that you could answer for us at a future meeting if we asked you to, and the backlog for use of force cases? Or should we be inviting, Director Harness?
Vice Chair Galloway, I have those numbers.
Awesome, thank you, thank you.
Yes, ma'am, thank you.
Okay, City Council's office? So sorry, okay, yes. Oh, I'm sorry.
Skipped one.
I'm so sorry, I skipped 2. The quarterly report on police-involved accidents. Forgive me, sir, I apologize.
Good evening, Madam Vice Chair Galloway and members of the board. My name is Commander Mark Velarde. I'm with the Albuquerque Police Department Real-Time Crime Center. Can you guys hear me? How's that?
That's good.
Okay. This is a little bit unorthodox for me, reference the presentation. You'd all requested the analysis of APD-involved crashes. And I'm not sure exactly how you guys want it presented. What I'll do is I'll go through the data and let you guys review it. Do y'all have it here? Okay. And so I think you understand the methodology from last quarter, actually last year. I think this was actually done September of 2017, so I don't know if it missed quarters in between there. However, what we did is when I was tasked with the looking at these APD-involved crashes, we looked at from the continuation of actually July 1, 2017 to current. And what we're looking at specifically are number of crashes to APD vehicles, number of sworn officers, number of crashes involving injuries, number of preventable crashes, number of officers involved in multiple crashes, and amount paid in liability per year. Before I start the presentation, I have to apologize because there were some pieces of information that couldn't be gathered during this analysis due to the time frame. There's other organizations that we looked at to compare to the city of Albuquerque, and now they've implemented either IPA requests or they don't have the information that's readily available to us. And so I'm not going to have that information for you during this presentation. This is kind of small for you. So these just represent the data sources that we pulled from. So obviously Human Resources provided information regarding the number of officers. Crime Analysis Unit did the analysis reference the change in percentages. And then obviously Fleet Management provided the miles driven for APD officers in this given time frame. And then Risk Management and the Safety Officer provided the amounts paid for medical expenses in regards to police-involved crashes. And lastly, the APD Traffic Unit and Fleet Act, the crash, I forget what it's called, the Crash Review Board actually provided the crash data involving officers. For margin of error and disclaimers, obviously medical liability and property damage paid for current and past years are likely to increase as those claims get settled. So we have to understand within the time frame that we're talking about, there still may be lawsuits pending, and so we may not have the absolute numbers regarding the settlements. The number of crashes and data for 2018 could increase as more cases are brought before the Accident Review Board, and all crashes and miles driven include all APD vehicles, marked and unmarked for sworn and civilian. And so what that means is we can't differentiate between what's a marked police car and what's a detective's car or even a civilian's car. And so those numbers may be slightly skewed, if you will. The number of officers fluctuates on a daily basis due to hiring and attrition. As you can imagine, over the last number of years, we've had officers retire, get fired, and then obviously join the Albuquerque Police Department. We'll show those numbers as we go. Some crashes provided by the review board did not have a finding, nor did it go through the board process. Currently, the Albuquerque Police Department in January of 2018 implemented the process of sending all crashes preventable and non-preventable before the crash review board. And so they're looking at absolutely every crash that happens within for a police vehicle. And then I advise you about the other cities providing information. And then predictions were based upon the first 6 months of 2017 data being subtracted from the total 2017 year and percentage developed, which means is in order to do predictive analysis, we had to look at the first year compared to the second year of the previous year. And then we were looking at for predictive analysis for 2018, we have to identify if it's going to follow the same trend percentage-wise for that time frame. One of the requests that was brought to my attention was the board wasn't sure what constituted a non-preventable versus a preventable accident. I have copies of the Fleet Accident Review Policy, if you guys want copies of that, and I'll provide that to you guys.
That'd be good to attach.
So what does the raw data say? And let me pull that up a little bit. When you talk about the number of APD-involved crashes, so actual crashes that happened in, I need to pull this up.
There you go.
So what happened in actual 2018 were 128. The proposed for 2018, so the remainder of the year, based on 2017's numbers, we're looking at potentially 196 additional crashes may occur in this year. As you can imagine, this is a proposed, it's not an actual, and so we'll yet to see what happens with officer-involved crashes. For the preventable crashes, 64 were identified as actual and proposed. We're assuming 100 will be preventable. All crashes in Albuquerque, so within the Albuquerque city limits, officers responded to 14,186 actual motor vehicle crashes within the Albuquerque proper. And then as far as property damage, we paid out approximately $112,000 in relation to APD-involved crashes. Total medical expenses actual is basically $250,000. The number of officers that we currently have with the Albuquerque Police Department is 864.
That's officers, not sworn, I mean, not employees?
Yes, ma'am, that's all sworn members of the police department. And as you can imagine, that number fluctuates constantly. And then officers who participated in the field services bid were 410. During this time frame, there was 253 calls for service, 253,000 calls for service that officers responded to between this time frame. 34,000 calls for service were priority 1 calls. And then preventable crashes per priority 1 calls, 535. So the percentage of crashes in Albuquerque involving APD vehicles was less than 1%.
For comparison purposes, is it okay if I just ask him a question?
Yeah.
For comparison purposes, and you talked about predicting increased accidents for this year.
Correct, ma'am.
What are the ingredients that go into your decision to say that we predict it will be increased?
Okay.
And how does that compare to accidents overall? Do the same ingredients apply to the general public as a, as percentage? What are those ingredients would help me decide whether or not it applies to regular folks or just police officers?
Right. So with predicting the numbers for the remainder of 2018, as I stated before, what we look at is the first half of 2017 as compared to the last half of 2017. We look at the same time frame based in the previous year. Because we had numbers from 2017 from the last analysis, we took the remainder of that analysis, identified what the percentage of change was based on actual, and then we apply it to the 2018
I see. So you use that math to make the prediction. So it wasn't
Yes, ma'am.
necessarily ingredients or characteristics of things that you were looking at?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Okay.
I had one more question. Does anybody else want to ask first?
Just, are you okay, or would you prefer that we
Wait
hold
to the
questions
end.
till the end?
Oh, it's okay. I
Okay.
don't mind
Okay.
going through it. It actually breaks up the monotony there.
Okay. The marked and unmarked cars, you were saying that you couldn't identify which were which?
Correct. When we looked at the total number of miles driven with between APD vehicles, we couldn't break out which was an unmarked or marked vehicle.
Is that true? Is that how other cities that you've looked at does that? I wonder, in terms of accidents, it would seem to me that a patrol car is easier to see because it's marked all over it. And
Right.
so do you think that that would be an important difference? And whether it's important or not, do other cities measure the difference between those two things?
I apologize, Member Fine. When I'm speaking of the data, I'm just talking about the data that's pulled from our warehouses or databases in order to identify how many specific miles were driven by APD vehicles. And so when that data comes from our fleet management division, we as analysts didn't identify or do the breakdown because it's very time intensive, and for the process of this analysis, we didn't have time to identify, okay, is this a marked unit or unmarked unit, and then mark it out and separate it from the data.
So.
But yes, to answer your question, a marked police vehicle is far more visible than an unmarked vehicle.
And so that you would expect that there would be there may be more of them, but as a percentage of the whole, there would be less likely to be in an accident with a patrol car.
Ma'am, we hope that whether it's marked or unmarked, that we can always reduce the number of crashes that we're involved in.
Yeah, but I was
as you
just
can imagine.
thinking, does that visual really have any bearing? Is it valuable information.
You know, from my perspective, we didn't analyze that, and I'll talk about that during the recommendations. From
Here's-
my perspective, if it has markings and it's reflective, yes, it is more visible to citizens, and hopefully they can avoid a collision with us.
I just wonder if that's important, so
I think so,
as you're
yes,
doing
ma'am.
this for the next time, I would
Yes.
like your opinion about that.
Okay, thank you.
I think that it's, for those of us who are in the regular technology world, you know, if you say this is Officer X and this is, you know, the car, it seems to me you could pull that there's a way to import that data in such a way that information would load if it was programmed to load. So it's not that you don't have the information, it's just that it doesn't come to you in that form, and it doesn't pull everything you necessarily need. My question is, can that be changed?
I would love for that to change.
How can we help you?
Do you have money, financing? So as you can imagine, within the Albuquerque Police Department, we face a lot of pitfalls when it comes to technology and technology development. We need databases that interface consistently with one another, so it's easier for us to pull information and get it out there to officers and to citizens alike. We're in the process of buying more software to help with that process, but as you can imagine, it takes money and time.
Mm-hmm. Well, I just think it's maybe worthwhile, so,
Yes, ma'am.
okay,
Thank you.
I'm done.
All right, I think if there's no other questions, Member Van Deventer, I'm sorry, did you have a question?
Commander, what was your name?
Velarde.
Commander Velarde, would you be able to provide us with this data? It's not attached to our materials, but it would be useful for us to review and also attach to our agenda.
Sure.
Thank you.
So at the end, I was going to ask for both the policy that you were talking about for preventable versus non-preventable crashes, as well as your slide deck that should have this information and any notes. If you could provide us with that, that would be great.
And what do you mean by side deck?
Your slides.
Oh, slide, yes.
Yes.
I'll provide this in I'll just print the PowerPoint presentation for you guys and get it to you.
Perfect.
Okay.
And then Member
It might be
Cass?
helpful to get it electronically as well, because if there's not a reason we shouldn't share it on our website, we started asking questions about this because the public was interested.
Sure.
And so I think it's important to share the results of what you're finding out with them, so an electronic form would be helpful.
Perfect.
I think that you guys the raw data, I think, might be beneficial for citizens at large. Is that the only one you'd want, the only one you'd want from electronically sent to you? Is that the only slide, or do you want
I
the
think the
entire slideshow?
PowerPoint is fine.
Okay.
Okay, Member Cass, I believe you had a question?
Yes, I'm curious, do you have any data about how many of these were running under Code 3 and, or the accident rate in Code 3 versus normal operation?
No, Member Cass, we didn't dive into that analysis at this point. One of my recommendations for the police department is for the traffic division, operations review, and then the academy get together and dive deeper into the causation of officer-involved crashes. During our crash review board, we identify why crashes occur, but during this analysis, when it was provided to you last time and this time, we didn't actually go into that. But that is something that we would like to develop further.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Did you want to continue, sir? Hello?
My question is, when you're doing the data for total vehicle crashes in the city of Albuquerque, that's for dispatched calls, correct? So if somebody
Correct.
comes into the station and does their own report, then that's not counted?
Correct. That's not going to capture that information. What we try to do in order to have the most current data is pull from our CAD system, our computer-aided dispatch system, and those are all, just like Dr. Harness pointed out, those are all calls that officers are dispatched to. Obviously, we miss some of the station reports or people that just don't want to file reports in general and are involved in crashes.
I'm going to defer now to Chair Waits, but Chair Waits, I believe Member Van Deventer has a question that she'd like to ask.
Sorry, I just had one actual question.
Okay.
As I was trying to read the data, I saw a number there that looked like it was 9 million. It was highlighted, and it was in the liability expenses. Can you tell us about that number?
Yeah, so in 2017, the number is highlighted because it's going to be, for lack of better wording, skewed slightly. We had a liability where we paid out reference an officer-involved crash, and the payout was $8.5 million. And so in reality, the number should have been about $450,000. But that one payout skewed the numbers.
It still, it will be included, though, that's why it's in there.
Correct. That's why we included it, yes, ma'am.
Okay.
You have more to your presentation.
There's more slides. It all references the same raw data. It's just in graph form.
Was there anything you learned from it?
Yes, obviously I learned, but it's very difficult to collect data within the Albuquerque Police Department and adjoining departments, and that's why I said that we face a lot of technology issues. We're building a data warehouse with the police department so that we can store information and pull it more readily and more easily.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, sir.
So we're at that quarterly report. Okay. Do we have anyone to discuss the department's exit interview process?
Oh, no, he's not. No, he's not.
Good, sir, good.
Here it is.
Thank you.
My note cards.
Is this where you put them?
Yeah, just overhead.
Does this go away? No, it's just.
Oh, okay. Awesome. I'm sorry for the delay. I'm Deputy Chief Roger Banez, and I'm the Deputy Chief for Administrative Services Bureau. Also with me is Ashley Montano. She works in the HR section of our department. Today I'm going to explain our process. We're initiating it on the 29th of September. We've been working on a questionnaire, trying to figure out what the best questions to ask and how to ask them. And I'll start by showing you a few of the questions that we've developed. So far, right now, these are draft questions, and we're going to develop them and work with them and see how it goes along as we go through it and see if there's any holes with our questions. The other thing is that once we develop this, we are going to set it up to go through our policy review board to make it part of our policy. Right now, it's not required. It's not in our policy. It's not a standard operating procedure. But we feel that doing this will give us a better idea of why officers are leaving, and is there a way we can keep officers. But in the meantime, let me give you a few stats concerning current retirements and resignations. Since July, we've had a total number of 5 individuals resign. 2 of them were cadets that were unable to complete the process, whether it be physically or they found out it wasn't what they wanted. So we lost 2 cadets. We lost 1 through a discipline, and the other 2 we lost through better jobs. They advised us that, you know, they wanted to be closer to family. They got an opportunity to work, work closer to family. So that's what we had as far as resignations. For retirements, we've had a total of 6 retirements since July. Two of them opted to retire, then be demoted from a certain rank. So that's two. One was through discipline. The other two, one was a lieutenant and the other one was an officer. They both had another job lined up, so that's what, and they were eligible to retire, so they did end up retiring. Another folk, he retired. He was a rehire. I think he had like close to 40 years of service for us. So I think he felt that it was time to go after 40 years, because he had retired, came back as a rehire, and decided to enjoy retirement. So those are the retirements and resignations. Any question on those?
Member Waits, or Chair Waits, may I? On the candidate who decided that APD police life wasn't for him, do you have any idea why specifically? Is there anything that we can do when we're recruiting that might better prepare candidates coming in, or is that just kind of a one-off experience?
I sit on the chief selection board. A deputy chief would sit with two other command, either a lieutenant or commander, and we review their files. Some of the people that we brought in that end up ultimately saying, no, this is not right for me. One of them was borderline. We felt that they had the skills to do it, but the problem was, did they have the heart to do this job? For example, one person jumped from job to job to job, had nothing negative, but couldn't focus on a career path. So what essentially happened was, we knew that there was a chance that this person might follow the same steps in the past, but we felt that if we gave this person a chance and the ability to go through academy, he might or she might work out. But apparently, history repeated itself.
And I think that that's unavoidable just in general, that's going to happen. But if we kind of keep track of that kind of stuff, how often do we think maybe this person's going to work out? Because if I remember correctly from the Citizens Police Academy, the dollar figure associated with getting an officer from recruitment through to being a beat cop was something in the neighborhood of like $250,000. Is that right?
I say with all the
240,000?
training and the equipment, like for example, the equipment to outfit him, it would cost, like the uniforms, the gun belt, and everything else, you're talking about a $10,000 to $11,000. The amount of time and time taken from the instructors to teach, as well as the effort that we bring in civilians to come in, the contractors to come in, the role players to come in, the paying overtime for these, it adds up there. I'm not sure if it's about 200, but I would say it's close to 100,000 just for an officer to be. By the time he's ready and he's out of the academy and ready to answer calls for service, I think it's well over 100.
Maybe worth just keeping an eye on the why people wash out so early. Not to, just an idea.
Sure,
Thank you.
Deputy Ibanez, would you be so kind as to email us the current draft of the questionnaire? Several weeks
Sure.
ago, one was sent our way. I reviewed that and had some feedback for it. I would like to see what the questionnaire looks like at this time.
Okay.
If you could
Well,
email it, that would be helpful.
I will. I would just like you to, the board, I'm sorry, Vice Chair and Vice Chair Waite and Member
Chelsea, yeah.
Deventer, I apologize. But let me show you the questions that we have presently. And if I see a nod, I will move to the next set of questions. And I will answer any questions.
I can't see it. I can't read it.
Yeah, it's very difficult for us to read. I think I'm in agreement with Member Van Deventer. If we could get an electronic copy of this, just so that we can
Yes,
review
ma'am.
them, that would be, thank you.
May I ask another?
Okay. One question I was asked is, what prompted you to seek alternative employment? We went to type of work, compensation, lack of recognition, company culture, business, product direction, quality of supervision, work conditions, family circumstances, career advancement opportunity, and other. That's one set of questions. Before making your decision to leave, did you investigate other options that would enable you to stay? The other set of questions regarded their supervision. And it's demonstrate fair and equal treatment. It's almost always, sometimes never, and comments. Provided recognition on the job, develop cooperation and teamwork, encourage, listen to suggestions, resolve complaints and problems, followed policies and practices. So this is in regards to how they were supervised, how they were treated by their superiors. The other question here is, and it's rated from excellent, good, fair, poor, and comments. And it's, how would you rate the following in relation to your job? Cooperation with your department, cooperation with other departments, communications in your department, communications within the company as a whole, communications between you and your manager, morale in your department, job satisfaction, training you received, and growth potential. Next set of questions. How did you feel about your salary and employee benefits? Again, excellent, good, fair, poor, and comments. Base salary, medical plan, dental plan, vision plan, 401k plan, life insurance, paid time off, standard or limited plan, stock options, or other. We also asked if there was any other benefits that they feel they should be offered. And then a general, are there any other comments on benefits? The last one on this page is, how frequently did you get performance feedback? Last page, sorry. What were your feelings about the performance review process? How frequently did you have discussions with your manager about your career goals? What did you like most about your job and or this company? What did you like least about your job and or this company? What does your new job offer that your job with this company does not? Why is the new job company better? Do you have any suggestions for improvement? Have you raised them in the past? And would you recommend APD to a friend as a place to work? Those are the questions we've drafted up at this point in time. And we will make sure we send it to you.
I have a
That's
couple of
fine.
questions. My first question is, do they fill this out anonymously?
We tried, I'm sorry, Chair Waits and Member Fine, we tried to get officers to fill this out voluntarily. Our plan, we've had a lot of folks say, no, I don't want to fill it out, and just left. Especially the folks that were disgruntled or they were being, we just asked somebody to fill this out who was being asked to leave or be terminated, and obviously he refused to fill out the questionnaire. What we're trying to do, and based on our policy approvals, is to make this a part of our checkout process, where when I retired the first time, we had to go to property, turn in all our equipment. We had to go to payroll and turn in all our documentation. We had to go to the county to turn in our ID cards. So we're going to include this as a requirement to fill out prior to them leaving as in the area of our HR section.
And would one of the options be to do it anonymously?
We could do that, have them do it anonymously. We can do that on like a monkey survey or something. But if we have them do it anonymously, there's no way we can verify that they handed in the documentation for when they do the out process.
Well, but it seems to me that the purpose of doing exit interviews is to find out why people are leaving. And the angry people shouldn't be left out of that. So
Yes, ma'am.
it seems to me, if you want to get good data on the outside, you're going to have to do it, make it easy for people to say, yes, they'll do it.
Okay.
So otherwise, you're going to get, yeah, I'm moving to Phoenix, so, nothing you could have done. You know what I mean? That you won't get good data to make decisions on. But I understand your answer, and I think it's something that you should consider. I recognize, though, that what you said is true. You can't be sure they filled it out. But if they refuse, they're not filling it out anyway. So anyway, the other thing is the questionnaires that you came up with. I know Chelsea said that she worked on this, and I know Ed had some input into this. I'm sure there are other groups, but did you start with best practices, or did you recruit information on exit interviews from other departments?
Yes, Chairman Waite and Member
Just call me
Finance.
Joanne, it's okay.
Oh, sorry.
And the last, so yes, you did. You got best practices from other people. And then the other thing, and I don't know if you're the right person to ask this question, but it seems to me the flip side of this coin is I understand there are lots of officers signing up. And so we have some entrance going on as well. Are you in a position to tell us that good news?
Yes, ma'am. Actually, like I said, I've sat on a lot of chief selection boards. The biggest thing is that a lot of these young folks, they retire young. They do 20 years and they can retire. Some of these guys need a job because they want to keep in their mind and their body physical and fit. So they do come back because, number one, they need something to do. And number two is, since we increase the benefits that they're receiving, they see an advantage of staying, instead of staying just 20 years. A lot of these folks are thinking that a 25-year retirement with the increase in pay is worth the benefit, especially for younger folks. We had a gentleman that retired in 1987, and he's currently now in the lateral program.
And that's the question. My last question is lateral. People coming in laterally from other departments, how's that going?
It's going great, ma'am. We started with 29, and we still have 29. They're mature. They have been on the streets. We grill them on chief selections, advising them that, this is not a department of the 80s or the 70s. This is a new department. We want to treat everybody with respect and dignity. Can you make that change? And they all agreed that, I'm in my 40s and I'm in my 50s. That stuff that back in the day when I was younger, I'm more mature. I can handle myself a lot better now, and I can adjust to change. So, yes, the cadets, or the lateral officers that we have, I've known at least, out of the 29, I know about 7 of them that used to work for me in this department. And some of them actually moved out of state, got jobs, and decided to come back to Albuquerque.
Albuquerque will do that to you.
All right. Anything else?
No.
Dr. Cass?
Yes, you mentioned earlier that someone had left because they were unable, or you thought they should leave probably because they were unable to choose a career path. And I was curious, how early does a new hire, sort of going to the beginning of the process, how early does a new hire choose a career path, and what are the options available, just in a general sense?
Chairman Waite and Dr. Cass, it was more of a, not a career path in a sense of Albuquerque, whether to be a detective or whether to be in homicide or whether to be a motors officer or traffic officer. For the most part, I think it was, is this job right for me? Some folks can't handle the homework. They don't like structure. They don't like discipline. They don't like turning in their stuff on time. It's a very academic structure, and some of these folks just, you know, I didn't even go to college, and I got to turn in homework at the academy. So some folks are starting to learn, and like I said, we see that these folks have potential, and if it's not too far one way or the other, we try and give them a chance. And we were hoping we would have graduated 40 for APD. But I think we're down now to about 36. So we're still, our numbers are still strong.
And how far in, excuse me, how far into the academy is it that you dropped from 40 to 36?
We started dropping since the first week. But it's stabilized for about a month now.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Thank you so much. First of all, I want to say thank you to yourself and to APD for jumping on this exit interview thing as quickly as you all have. This has come about just, I would say, in the last 6 months, and that's being, you know, very generous on the timeline. I think it may have even been less time than that. So thank you for doing this. As part of the process, I know that when people leave angry, they may not always respond to these exit surveys. And I guess I need to back up. Are you coupling this with an actual in-person speaking to their supervisor or to maybe their next level supervisor as to why they're leaving? Like, is there a discussion that supplements this document, or is this kind of it?
We're in the process of trying to get that one-on-one. When I was a supervisor and I noticed that people were trying to leave, I would sit down with them. As a commander, I would sit down with them and ask him general questions. The reason why I did that is I did 24 years in the military, and we did exit interviews back in the day. And we wanted to recruit, but we wanted the bleeding to stop. So that's why we started exit interviews. So I'm hoping that we can try and get the anonymous interviews done, but also get a one-on-one and have that documented as part, so we can at least confirm the results we're getting from, if we go through an anonymous platform, we can at least verify it with the information we're getting on one-on-one interviews.
Wonderful. Do you all do anything kind of midstream? Do you check in with your officers in any formal way to see how they're feeling about their pay, their benefits, their interactions with their superiors, or morale, or any of these same type of questions? Do you do that anywhere along the street, the line?
We do that. The department is learning how to do interviews and it's telemanagement. You know, we have these checkpoints we have to hit. We have to see how they're succeeding, where they're failing, what needs improvement. Are we at that point where I think we should be? Honestly, I don't think so. What is missing, and we're still working on it, we're developing our LEADS program, which is to develop leadership. To develop our leadership to actually do what you mentioned, because that's how I did it in the military for 24 years. And I believe that was most effective, was finding out what do you want, what the person wants, where he wants to go, how can I get you there, what training I can send you to, and how can I make you succeed?
Exactly. I think that it's so important, instead of waiting until the crisis has already happened and you're so few officers on the street, and the officers that are still working there are so overworked and tired and stressed that it leads to all these other complications down the line. If there was a systematic within APD touch point every so often, if that's not happening now, it's certainly probably the next step after this, you know, very obvious first step. So
And
just a thought.
Chairman Wade and Vice Chair Galloway, I agree with you. When I retired the first time with APD, nobody asked me why I left.
Yeah. So simple, isn't it?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Thanks. Thank you again.
Thank you, Chair Waits. Deputy Ibanez, one other thing that occurred to me when Vice Chair Galloway was asking you questions. Do you guys do annual performance reviews?
Yes, ma'am. Chairman Wade and Member DeVenter. Yes, we do. We're doing it right now. For example, like our commanders, we actually, since Chief Geyer came in, we were actually bringing them in. We're asking them, okay, what have you accomplished? What's your 6-month, what do you want to accomplish in 6 months, a year? Have you met your timeline for the CASA? Or have you, what have you done for community service? We meet with them. I think right now we're doing the commanders every 3 months. And I think on the lower ranking, how often do we meet?
Ma'am, so just to elaborate, we do checkpoints, and the checkpoints are done quarterly, where the supervisor meets with the officer one-on-one and touches base with them to see what they can improve on, if they need improvement, and where. So yes, we are, and our next checkpoint is actually in October. So,
Is there, are any documents yielded? Is this a written evaluation?
this is electronic evaluation that we sort through via PeopleSoft.
Okay, and so it's a specific like template of questions, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Some of the questions are going to be different. It's like for HR personnel that work HR, we ask them different questions than we would ask civilian personnel that work at our emergency comms. We ask officers different questions compared to sergeants, lieutenants, and on-op. So it's kind of tailored to them based on their rank and what they do. But I think the most important thing is, can we train the supervisors to, instead of going through checklists and just asking questions that's provided, go into depth and ask and be responsive to the needs of your employees. I think that's where we need to work on too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions, board members? Any other presentations that you have?
No, Chairman, wait, I'm done. I'm good.
Okay, you're good? Okay.
I almost said I'm
appreciate
done,
it.
but yes.
Yeah, well, we definitely appreciate it.
Thank you,
We
sir.
thank you so much for that presentation.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Have a good evening.
All right. Okay, City Council.
Chairman Waits, board members, the council has 2 pieces of legislation in front of them that have been deferred. Ordinance amendments were deferred by the Finance Government Operations Committee to the October 8th committee meeting. Also, the communication to reappoint Mr. Harness was deferred to the November 19th council meeting. Councilors want to review ordinance changes and the ordinance overall. Our office is setting up a council study session to discuss these issues. For those not familiar, a study session is a public meeting held by City Council that is a little less formal, that more easily provides for presentations and discussions. I have a meeting set for tomorrow with other staff to talk about next steps in scheduling the study session and the ordinance review in general. I will keep the board and Mr. Harness updated on the scheduling of the study session as we move forward. And with that, I stand for any questions.
Well, you know our next question is going to be.
When?
Chairman Waits, board members, I should have included that actually. So kind of with the ordinance review, appointments for new members is also going to be kind of waiting until the ordinance review is complete by city councilors.
So now repeat that, you're going to wait till the ordinance review is complete? And that
Chairman
is-
Waits, yes, that's correct.
And they're working on that currently, right?
Yes.
Is there a timeline or? And I ask that question because we've been waiting for the last 4 months for new members. And now you're telling me we're pushing it out a little bit further.
Chairman Waits, yes, that's what we've been instructed, and I don't have a specific timeline at this moment, but the ordinance changes will be back in front of the committee next month on October 8th.
Thank you, Chair Waits. Mr. Moya, why? Why are the new board member appointments being postponed?
Chairman Waits, Board Member Van Deventer, the councilors want to look at the appointment process and the appointments in the ordinance, and they want to hold off, and if there's changes that they want to make those changes before new board members are brought on.
They are the ones who appoint board members, are they not?
Chairman Waits, Board Member Van Deventer, yes, they essentially consent and approve recommendation from council staff.
Okay, so they should be very familiar with the process as is. They should not need, arguably, they should not need time to study how they appoint board members, it seems to reason.
Chairman Waits, Van Deventer, they are very familiar with it, but I think they want to review the application that prospective members fill out, and they want to review exactly how appointees are chosen.
Okay, who is the city councilor who's primarily leading this charge of reviewing this process?
Chairman Waits, Board Member Van Deventer, the sponsoring councilors are Councilor Winter and Councilor Benton, and I've had conversations with Councilor Winter specifically on reviewing the ordinance. From my understanding, I think Councilor Sanchez has also had conversations with some board members about, I think, just things in general, but I believe Councilor Sanchez has kind of given some direction as well.
Okay, and do you have any understanding as to what it is about the selection and appointment process for new board members that is raising questions in their mind? What particularly are they reviewing or potentially unhappy about?
Chairman Waits, Van Deventer, I'm not sure specifically, to be quite honest, at this point. I think that's something that's going to be discussed just moving forward at the study session, and then possibly other avenues after that.
Thank you.
So I guess my question is, we're invited, correct?
Chairman Waits, yes,
Is there
sir.
an issue with the Open Meetings Act if this whole board?
Chairman Waits, there may be, well, all city councilors attend those meetings, so it's a public meeting, it's published, and so there shouldn't be a problem, but I would defer to your council.
Hopefully this one works, does it?
Okay, there you go.
Chairman Waits, I don't have enough information about how it's been noticed or how it has been presented from City Council to provide an opinion on that, but if City Council is all going to be present, the Open Meetings Act would arguably apply, so the entire board's presence there should not matter because we're already in an Opens Meeting Act scenario.
Okay. So we definitely need to be at that table because this is a huge issue for us. We're working hard, we're shorthanded, and it's important that we get our new members. So please relay that message to whomever, Councilor Winters, whoever, you know, so thank you.
Chair Waits, I have a question.
Director Hunter.
Given this study session that is in the works, do you know exactly what data, what information the counselors are going to be examining as they examine whether or not there needs to be more revisions to the oversight ordinance?
Chairman Waits, Mr. Harness, I don't have specific answers to that now. I will be meeting with other staff tomorrow to kind of flesh out an agenda and some talking points for that study session. If you have specific ideas that you would like to suggest, and I can pass those along as well. But after tomorrow's meeting, I'll probably have a much clearer sense on what we'll be doing for that study session.
My suggestion would be that they review the agenda and the minutes for the meetings that have been conducted for the last 3 years so that they can have an understanding of the workflow of this organization.
Board Member Fine.
I think that it's important to say here, particularly for people in the room and people in the public elsewhere, that it is new information to us that the city council's counselors are, some of them, are unhappy with the quality of communication that we, as a board, have had with them. I think there's some really clear reasons why that is on our part, because we were so ingrained with this is separate that we thought your being here, sir, was the connection they wanted, and therefore we should bug off other than what's specifically laid out in the ordinance. So I think we've had a miscommunication here. That a work study session makes perfect sense to me. I got a call from Ken Sanchez, and I visited with Leonard about that. And I think it's a great idea. I think that when we started this 3.5 years ago, or a little over 3.5 years ago, we were all working on something that was a plan that hadn't been put in practice. Many innovative things were done with this format, with this ordinance. And we're at a time now that it's time to take a look at that and say, how's it working? And should we adjust? What should we adjust? And that's what I'm expecting this study session to be. And I think it's wonderful that we're going to have it. It might be helpful if you're in your staff meeting, if you have questions that come up that we should be thinking about, because honestly, we don't know what they want to know, and we realize how jammed they are with everything they're doing. So we don't want to overburden them either. So if you could give us some kind of a frame, it would help.
I agree. And any other information you could pass along to us would be important. I think that would be great, so that we're prepared to give them what they need. Any other questions?
I assume because this is an Open Meetings Act scenario, thank you for that verbiage, I appreciate it, that there's going to be an agenda. And will we have an opportunity, or any of the other parties that are being invited to this process, have the opportunity to weigh in on that agenda and add items? Or will this be driven specifically by council members?
Chairman Waits, Board Member Galloway, the agenda is usually set by the council president. I would assume that it would probably be something that's pretty general statement, just about discussion about the police oversight ordinance, and then maybe just a little more direction on kind of where that discussion wants to go. But they're usually just pretty general discussions about X, presentation from Y. It's usually pretty general statements like that.
Leaves it very broad and
Yes.
open for, okay, thank you.
Did you say there was a schedule for this, or it's yet to be? When is the first action going to be taken or scheduled?
Chairman Waits, Dr. Cass, it hasn't been scheduled yet. We're meeting tomorrow to talk about possible dates. As you can imagine, scheduling for 9 counselors at a non-city council meeting time can be quite the task, but I believe we're trying to get this done before the end of October, so within the next couple weeks here.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay.
Chairman Waits, if I could just,
Sure.
one more thing. If you don't mind, I'm going to excuse myself a little early from the meeting tonight. I'm probably going to stay through the discussion agenda item, and then I'll be heading out a little bit early.
Okay, thank you. All righty.
Yeah, you might want to tell them the dates we're
Oh,
going to
yes, we will be out the end of the month, the 30th through the 7th, I think, the 5th. So, well, I'll call you and make sure. Mr. James Lewis, Mayor's Office.
Chairman Waits, members of the board, James Lewis, on behalf of the mayor's office, I just wanted to give you an update on the CASA town hall meeting that we're looking at having. We gave you November 17th, but we've actually switched that to November 10th. And it's going to be from 2 to 4 at the convention center. And what we have been doing over the last week, we've been going through our regular meetings with all of the amicis and the stakeholders. What we would like to do is we've been talking to the business community, the Albuquerque Chamber, the Hispano Chamber, and a lot of other different entities within the community that are not aware of what the CASA is all about. So we're going to have a presentation from the U.S. Attorney's Office to talk about really how CASA got started. We have the mayor making a presentation. The staff will actually go through the presentation that they made before the judge just before they had the last hearing there. So we're looking at expanding the people that are going to be participating so we can broaden it so the community will be aware of what we're doing in reference to CASA.
Okay. That's a good idea. Maybe, hopefully, someone from our organization can do a brief presentation on POB or CPOA. You know,
we're
if that's
actually,
possible.
Mr. Chairman, we are, this is being co-sponsored with the U.S. Attorney's Office.
Oh.
We're going to have a 2-hour period, but we're also going to probably have the various entities to set up some booth. So as people wanted additional information, they can sit and they can visit and they can talk with them.
Okay.
So again, we're right now working on the agenda, looking at the time parameters, make sure we can disseminate enough information where people understand what it's all about.
Okay. Well, we appreciate the invitation too.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Oh.
You have a question?
Would you repeat the date again?
Mr. Chairman, Member Cass, it is going to be November the 10th from 2 to 4 at the Convention Center.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you. City Attorney's Office.
I'm going to use this short podium. Good evening, Chair Waits and members of the board. I'm able to give you an update on the status of the development of the use of force policies. Most of you have heard this update last week and nothing has changed, but for the benefit of those of you who haven't and the public, I'm happy to give this update. The use of force policies are working their way through the policy development process. The policy that's furthest along is 252, which is it's actually called use of force. That has been sent to the independent monitor for review. We have not received his final determination on whether that passes muster to date. He does live where the hurricane is hitting. We don't know if that's going to impact his decision or not, but we are hopeful to get it by next week. 253 is the definitions, and the city has received comments and feedback from the monitor and the Department of Justice, and is in the process of preparing what's called the resolution draft, which will be sent to the monitor for approval, and that is due on September 22nd. 254 and 255 are both out to the monitor and parties for comments, and we expect comments back by September 14th. 254 is the intermediate weapons policy, and 255 is the de-escalation policy. 256 is reporting on use of force, and 257 is investigating use of force. For now, we have put those policies on hold until we determine what will be the final draft of 252. So we're waiting to hear back from the monitor as to what needs to be in 252 before we move that forward and determine what needs to be in 256 and 257. Once we get that feedback, we will prepare the draft of those that are presented to the Office of Policy Analysis, and that's the first step in the policy development process. We did have a court deadline of September 21st to review, is the word in the court's order, all of the policies, and of October 1st to develop the training. We have determined with the discussion of the Department of Justice and the monitor that those deadlines will not be met. We've advised the court of that, and the monitor particularly believes that these should not be rushed, and we should work to get these right, and everyone agrees. And so we will be filing a motion to extend the deadline. So right now, the court has indicated that the judge would like those policies to be finished by October 31st, and it might depend on whether there's any objection to the court on about what's actually in the policy of 252.
That's fine.
Yes.
I have a question. I was under the impression, and I could be totally wrong, but I was under the impression that some of the other policies that are not 252, but in the suite, were going through the process, and not all of them have come to us. And my understanding was that everything that came to us from this point forward would follow the 352 process that we set up. Is that accurate?
Chair Waits and Member Fine, I do believe that is, I do believe that we're following through 352 at this point. At this point, you should have received, and I believe you did receive 253, and that is the definitions. And you would have had a 30-day commentary period for that. And so we have now, that 30-day period is passed, and we're preparing the draft based on the comments received from the POB and the monitor and parties. That has to go back to the monitor for final approval. The rest of the policies have not gone to what's called PPRB yet. Okay. No, I'm sorry, forgive me. 254 and 255 also should have gone to you by this point. You should have received those by this point.
Those are the ones we just recently got.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, so those now are out as well to the monitor and parties for comment. So the last two remaining are 256 and 257, which have not even gone to the Office of Policy Analysis. If we follow 352, which is what was recently requested, you will not get those until they have completed PPRB, the Policy Procedures and Review Board.
So if I heard you right, then 254, 55, 56, and 57 will all have followed the 352 policy?
Yes.
The process?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And to be clear, the only exceptions from following 352 thus far have been additional notice and additional opportunity to be heard by both the board and the public.
So I just want to make sure that the process, because we got sideways on 252, and I want to make sure that we're not going to get sideways again.
All right.
I'm sorry, can you clarify for me, did 254 and 55 go to PPRB before they came to us? Because my understanding was they had not.
No, I believe they did go to PPRB. I will have to check on that, and I'll have to check on the timeline. I don't have that right in front of me.
Okay, thank you.
So, Mr. Schmealer, I will send an email to update you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Will you be available during our discussion on 252?
Yes.
Okay. Use of force, rather. Okay. Any other questions? Okay.
CPC.
We don't have anyone from the CPC.
Yes, we do.
Yeah, 3 of us from the CPC.
Oh, 4.
I'm sorry, who's the 4? Oh, there are 4 of us, I'm sorry. Next to someone.
Well, if you have a report or comment, please.
You'll come run us over if
Yes.
you'd like to hear it. Yeah, I mean.
We always like to hear from the CPC.
Thank you, Chairman and members of the board. My name is Kathleen Burke. I'm on the Southeast Area Community Policing Council. I did my first ride-along a few weeks ago in the Southeast Command. I just wanted to give a brief report back on that. It was fascinating. I was impressed by the crew there doing the evening shift at the at the command there. But one thing that struck me most important of all, and I wanted to go ahead and bring that up tonight as long as I had the opportunity, is that our officers are completely bogged down with paperwork. I saw a felony with my host, driver, and officer that evening. Early in the shift, we saw a felony. He had to spend most of the rest of his shift doing the paperwork for that felony. And a lot of us seem to know now that our officers on the street are driving and typing at the same time. I'm sorry to say, but that is the fact of the matter. I would like to start looking into a scribe program for the officers so that they might have someone with them who can do a lot of the paperwork for them. I know this goes on in hospitals where physicians have a medical scribe with them who does a lot of their paperwork, and then the physician has the opportunity to look over the paperwork before it's submitted. So I'm going to put some time and thought into looking into this, and I'll stay in touch with you guys about it. Maybe we can ask for a study. Yes, that's fine.
I have some information that'll be helpful because
Okay.
I saw the same thing when I have gone. We go on 2 ride-alongs every 6 months for the full shift, and so we've seen a lot of it, especially those of us who've been around here a long time. And I shared your exact concern, and on one of the ride-alongs I went to, and the officer was a millennial and very tech savvy. And I was impressed by the equipment he provided to himself to make his life easier. You know, I mean, it was really stunning. But I asked him in the ride-along, how many different platforms are you adding the same information into while you're adding? And the answer's 8. 8. So for any of you who have a technology background, you know how nuts that is, okay? And it is nuts because, and for cause, I mean, nobody did anything wrong, but there was never enough money to replace the system, so they patchwork in this, just like companies all over the place. And so there is an effort going on that we are going to be meeting with the Chamber of Commerce. And this is separate from the POB, but just me as a person, it bothered me. And so there are some other people who are going to be meeting about that to see with IT, the APD IT department, and the chief, to see whether or not and what it would take to fix that. So the scribe idea is a good idea, but I think that's another body, isn't it?
It's another body. They're typically low-paid folks who are trying to work their way up. Sometimes they're students.
I've seen it in the healthcare system. I've seen it. But
Yeah,
I
so
think we
something
could
to
save a
consider.
whole lot of time if we weren't going through 8 platforms with the same information.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So those of us who are out in the outside world and Amazon customers, we can't fathom this, okay?
Yeah,
So
right.
in any way, I just wanted to let you know that there is some significant effort going on separate from the POB, but because we saw the same thing that you saw.
Thank you. Thank you. And just one last thing is that by the end of my shift, the calls for service were backed up for 9 hours.
I believe it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, folks.
Thank you.
All right.
Did anybody else from the
Anyone
city?
else?
I'm sure that Northeast would like to as well. Let's put up with one nervous chatter again. Yes, again, Chairman Waits and member of the board, I stand before you. The Valley CPC is currently mulling, well, now 3 separate recommendations. We would like to make a recommendation for every area command to have their commanders stay put for at least 3 years. We've gone through 3 in the Valley Area Command in the last year, and the current one we have is still acting. The other one we're considering is the one I told you about. And we want to do something about block captains, but we still need to clarify whether block captains completely come through the Neighborhood Watch program. I was told the other night that there's another way of people to become block captains. So those are the three we're considering. We started last year with 2 CPC voting members, and we were in the police academy, which was huge, and we only had about 3 or 4 members show up at any given time. Since then, we relocated to the Johnny Tapia Community Center, and we are building. We're not our attendance is not ginormous, I would say, but we're having more people coming in each time. Also, our presentation this month is scheduled to be Chief Gaia. So we're, oh yeah, I know how to bug someone. And we're hoping for a significant crowd for that.
Make sure he has a mic. His voice is very soft and
You know,
hard
I
to hear.
don't think we can provide one, but we can provide a talking scribe.
When is your next meeting?
It's going to be 2 weeks today, September 27th. We're also planning a Thanksgiving potluck, because our meeting in November is a week before the actual Thanksgiving. So we reckon that if you feed them, they will come. And we're going to invite as many people involved in, certainly all of you, and our councillors, and at least one of the deputy chiefs, and various other people.
If anyone that was watching on GovTV wanted to contact you or find out more about these things that you're doing, how would they do that?
On the page of the community policing councils, I haven't posted, we've changed our email to, we're now the area with a CPC command is our email, and I will make sure that's posted on the page.
Well, we can post it on the CPOA.
And you can post it on your page too.
Yes. And so just make sure, because we can post it on Facebook.
Oh, don't worry, Mr. Harness has heard from me at length. He knows my email, right? Yeah, he does.
We'll be happy to help you spread the word.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. All righty. Anything else?
Hello, I'm Vicki Williams. I'm with the Northeast CPC, and I just wanted to tell you about our recommendation, so Chair Waits, members of the board. We have been doing presentations to the Northeast Area Command officers explaining who we are, because one of the ride-alongs that I went on, they didn't know who we are or what we did. So we've been meeting with them with the briefings, just for like a 10 or 15-minute briefing, saying who we are, what we do, and asking what we can do to help the officers. And so we talked in our meeting last night about creating a recommendation based on their feedback for dispatch and to be more educated and get more training as far as when the calls come in, what they can actually tell the people that are calling, what the officers can and can't do, what the difference is between a civil call or a criminal call, and kind of help them to understand what to expect, what the officers can actually do and what they may not be able to do. And also having some kind of list, you know, wherever that list lives, of the different phone numbers that people can call for services instead of calling 242 cops. Maybe it's a 311 call. You know, what can we do to eliminate the calls that are coming into the center? But I think based on feedback that we've got from them, the training for dispatch and for the call center is a recommendation that we're going to provide. So,
thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Again, if you all have anything that you want to pass along, and we can disseminate.
Yes.
We'll be glad to do that. So
Okay.
Please
All
keep
right.
us informed. And I know Director Harness is at all the CPC meetings,
Yes.
and very very responsive to anything that
Yes.
you all need. So
Yes, he
please
is.
keep that up.
Yes, yes.
Thank
Okay.
you so much.
All right, thank you.
All right. Moving along.
I
Sure.
think there's there's another person she may.
I don't know if she's interested, but I want to thank you guys for coming up here and letting us know what's going on. I think that that is valuable information for the community to have, and I don't know about you, but I think it might be something we want to consider doing ongoing. And that way it gives you guys the opportunity, like, do this again in the future. Maybe, like, I don't know if it's every meeting or every other meeting, we bring the CPC members up, a representative from each of the CPCs, to kind of let us know what's going on in your areas, and that will give you, instead of having to wing it, we can, you know, formalize things. And if you've got recommendations that you're wanting to make that you may want to include in the minutes that get posted to the POB's website as well, that might be great.
Too many broken bones.
I hear you.
Dorothy Woodward with the Northeast CPC. I've been at this for a long time. And Joanne, we've been in the courtroom together. And then Dr. Cass, you come to our meetings. I announced in June before Judge Brack that our CPC has drafted a proposal of an ordinance that will be submitted to the City Council. This ordinance is requesting that our CPCs, each of the 6 CPCs, will continue on in perpetuity after the CASA agreement is, the compliance is completed and the monitor exits Albuquerque. So we are working on this. We are collaborating with the other 5 CPCs, and I believe that one of the City Council attorneys has also met with our people, with the CPCs, CPC chairs, I should say. But I initially spoke about this at my District 4 coalition. Brad Winter is my city councilor, and it was there that I brought it up. It has the support of our commander at Northeast area, and Brad Winter said that he would sponsor this and he would seek a co-sponsor or 2. So we're hoping this happens. Promises have been made since I can remember, back from February 2015, that yes, the CPCs are to remain. But those are just words. We need an ordinance. I don't know your name. Who are you? Okay, you've been involved in this, haven't you? Okay, so they know, he knows what we're talking about. If you don't know, I'm telling you now. DOJ knows, Mr. Harness knows, APD knows, and now so does the City Council. Thank you very much, Mr. Waits, Ms. Fine, and the others.
Yeah.
Dr. Cass.
Thank you for coming.
Again, we're happy to have you all here. And
we do tune in, believe me.
all right, thank you.
You're very welcome.
Come on up. Come on up.
It's a good thing.
That's always a good thing with you. I definitely appreciate you.
Oh, a smaller one. When I spoke to the council in defence of Mr. Harness, I also mentioned how rewarding it is for us to have a closer relationship with the board, the POB, and also how deeply rewarding it is for us to finally be out of the hinterlands and to be working with a mayor who understands what we are and what we're doing and fully supports us, and a police chief also, and that we are very encouraged by that. So,
Well, thank you. I agree with you. Thank you so much. Director Harness.
Chair Waits, Honorable Board, good evening.
As far as the backlog for the use of force numbers reported on the last status conference with Judge Brack, there's a total of 304 use of force cases. That is not including serious use of force cases. And these are the cases that Commander Middleton spoke with you about a couple of months ago. And I said that I would get you information on those cases that were found to be out of policy. There were two that were referred for criminal review, and the district attorney declined prosecution in those cases. And then there were 5 others that were deemed to be out of policy. Currently, they are working with the union and the chief to come up with an agreement as to how to handle these cases that are found to be out of policy because they're out of time. So what is going to happen with these cases? The current proposal is that the officers will sit down for an interview, and the chief will then determine the discipline which would have been imposed if it was within the time frame, and it will go on the officer's disciplinary history. And in future cases, it will be used as an aggravating circumstance when considering progressive discipline. That's the current proposal, but that proposal has not been agreed to as yet.
May I ask a question? I just want to get the numbers right. You said there were 300 in the backlog, 300 and something?
That's correct, 304.
304, and you said 5. What was the number you said were dismissed by the DA?
2.
So are you saying that the 5 and 2, the 7, are all that advanced out of 304?
No, those 304 are still being reviewed and investigated. They believe they'll be done with the backlog by March of next year.
Okay, so they haven't like been dismissed
No.
or administratively
No.
closed or anything like
Right.
that? Okay, thank you.
I made an appearance in the status conference in front of Judge Brack this week to report on the mediation program. Our numbers are, we've had 4 cases where the complainant refused to participate in the process. And that was the first wave that we sent over to the community mediation program. So I'm trying a different tactic at this point. So I'm sending those that we're going to refer to mediation, I'm sending the complainant the mediation information first before city ADR reaches out to them to set up the session. So we'll see if we can get a better cooperation rate with that. Having said that, if the ordinance is going to be reviewed, maybe the question that might be reviewed in the ordinance is whether or not the ordinance wants to state that mediation first is required for all complaints. We've successfully carved out a small portion of cases with the stipulation with the court, but there's clearly still conflict between the settlement agreement and the ordinance, which, since we're reviewing it, might be one of the issues that will be worked out.
Specifically around mediation, you mean?
Yes.
Okay.
I sat through the, well, we also had the compliance meeting this week with Deputy Chief Garcia. They are in compliance. They've met their deadlines except for a couple of areas. One of them is the Force Review Board, which has to be revamped, and that's been taken on by Lieutenant Perez. And the other is the staffing of the video review unit. They're hiring 10 personnel to go through to do video review for compliance in the department. So those 2 phases were not in compliance as far as the original compliance plan. They will be drafting a compliance 2.0, if you will, and that will be distributed to the parties.
And will the people that are being hired to do the video stuff, will they be sworn or employees, like civilian employees?
Chair Waits, board member, fine. I believe they'll be non-sworn personnel.
Non-sworn, okay.
The monitoring team will be in town November 5th through the 10th or the 9th, depending on who of the monitoring team.
It's interesting that the CASA thing is the next day. Are they staying for that?
That's the reason for that date, so that
So that they
members of the
can-
monitoring team could be at that meeting.
Oh, good.
Dr. Ginger will be filing his MIR 8 on the 2nd of November. The draft will go to the parties on the 2nd of October. And the public hearing for that IMR 8 will be December 7th at 11 a.m. That's a Friday, and it will start at 11. It will take the rest of the day. City Attorney already updated you on the timelines for the use of force. Regarding policy 341, which this board made recommendations to Chief Geyer, and he stated that he was sending those along to the monitor for review. 341 is going to come back because it doesn't incorporate the new makeup of the Internal Affairs Division, where there are 2 divisions within IA now, force and misconduct. So 341 is coming back to incorporate those changes. And I believe it's going to be going through the 352 process and starting at OPA. So your changes have not been as yet incorporated as I know. We'll have to wait and see what that draft looks like to see if in fact they were incorporated or not. And then this will be another chance to comment and recommend on 341. So let's go to one of my favorite subjects, the Inspection of Public Records Act. We have coordinated with the city to list myself as the record custodian for the POB, CPOA, in their central listing on the city's website. We will be updating our website to include information on how to get public records. And we're going to be drafting a proposed outgoing, a proposed email response for your emails so that anyone who believes that you may be a record custodian can be directed to the website so that there is no longer any confusion as to those issues, or shall I say, feigned confusion. Attorney Gooch and I attended Next Request training yesterday. Next Request is the city's automated Inspection of Public Records Act software and tracking system. Because there are some legal implications with that software program, we're going to put it on next month's agenda for discussion. Yesterday, I spoke to the lateral class, 29 folks, gave them the overview of Police Oversight Board and Oversight and what they can expect if they hear from us at any point in time. I met with Internal Affairs Lieutenant Johnson to discuss how to handle serious use of force cases now that there isn't a force review board, yet there are still cases that are ongoing. So what is going to happen at this point is we will get that case when it goes to command for review for the 30-day review period. So once the 30-day review period comes up, I will be alerted that there's a serious use of force case for review. That will have to be re-examined again once the force review board is up, but that's not going to be for a while.
Can I ask you a nipper question?
Chair
wait till the
Waits,
end.
Board Member Fine, certainly.
I'll wait to the end
no,
if you'd
no, it's-
prefer. You just, we're talking about IPRA, so
Mhm.
I want to, wonder if you could clarify for us, since we deal with records that belong to APD, and people make requests of us, I have seen cases where people are complaining that we don't forward to them the information that is APD's work. So is there a way to make that clear on the website that, I mean, it is true, isn't it, that we can't send forward APD files or records? So how do we make it clear to people that if you make an IPRA request to us and it involves APD, you have to also make one to them?
Chair Waits and Board Member Fine, what we're envisioning is that there will be language to try and make the distinction as clear as possible. If the case is closed and the investigation is closed, then that's going to be an APD request. If it's an open investigation, then that file would be with us. But there's other issues that Attorney Gooch and Attorney Driggers are going to be working out as to how to respond for these types of cases, for these types of requests.
Thank you. I appreciate that clarification.
And lastly, I have received the copy of the Garcia investigation, and I will report to you next month on my findings. And I stand for questions.
Any other questions?
Oh, I'm sorry. I have one other thing. You should have you all should have your information for NACOL.
And can you reconcile what you received, what the Garcia investigation with what's been in the paper recently about whether what files were being withheld or not withheld, or is everything progressing as you expected? I guess that's another way to ask the question.
Chair Waits, Board Member Dr. Cass, I've only done a cursory look at it, but it appears that it has the entire investigation from the third party, and it also includes all of the supporting documents and interviews. I don't know. I understand that there's civil action going on at this point regarding that file in that case, and I don't know what was withheld and what was. I assume the whole thing was withheld, so I don't know, to be honest with you.
Well, I thought that the city was withholding, had reasons or had stated reasons that they were withholding this, and that's not true?
No, Chair Waits, Board Member Dr. Cass, no, I think City Attorney Aguilar made it clear that he was going to turn the file over to us for us to review, which is, I mean, I think it's 5 words in the ordinance, but it says the administrative office can review any internal affairs case. So at this point, I have no reason to think that the file isn't complete.
Thanks.
Any other questions for Director Harness? Thank you. Okay, moving along. Reports from subcommittees, Community Outreach Subcommittee, Chantel?
Okay.
Sure, I'm sorry.
No, that's completely fine. So the Outreach Subcommittee, excuse me, met on August 28th. At that meeting, we discussed continued media outreach, and I believe Ms. Bustos and I were going to be working with KRQE this month, and then make a contact back to Pat Allen. We did a radio interview, Director Harness and I did a radio interview with him a couple months ago, just to see if there's any interest in continued public information sharing for any CASA-related policies. And so I will be doing that. I have not yet done so, but we're going to be making that effort. We spent a lot of time talking about how to make the policies, the SOP information, more available to the public via our website. And so Ms. Bustos has worked very diligently on that and made that readily accessible to anybody who may go to the POB's website looking for that. It's very clear. So that is an outreach effort that I am thrilled to have seen happen. We're also still kind of talking about website design. And then our meeting kind of fizzled out. We ran into some time crunches and didn't get to complete our agenda, but they are being tabled for our next meeting, which is scheduled for September 25th at 2:30 at the Plaza del Sol building. So we're going to be doing that. But one of the things that we'll talk about a little later down the agenda is prospective board members and kind of what that process should look like in onboarding them, but I'm going to hold back on any further discussion for that until then.
Okay. Like orientation, that's what you mean.
Kind of, and then some additional
reality
thoughts
check.
percolating.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Policy and Procedure Subcommittee. Dr. Tabb.
So we've, the Policy and Procedures Subcommittee, or members thereof, have spent quite a bit of time engaged in the use of force policy review, and I think we're going to have more discussion about that tonight. What I would like to focus on is the process, because there's also been a lot of discussion about whether 352 has been followed and whether we're doing things in exactly the right order. And I think you can tell from what we've heard already tonight is that it's a complicated process, and it's hard to keep track of where things are. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to sort of expand this to make it even more complicated, maybe. But I think what we need to do is we need to start looking at the process, what we're about, from starting with the end in mind, and what is the goal of policy making. And I think the POB reviews APD policies and provides a public forum for those policy reviews, but sometimes not in that order. So that's kind of the first complexity. Based on that information and further research, then we can make a recommendation to the appropriate APD SOP, which results in improved policing in the field. And I think that's the ultimate goal to keep in mind, is that we're trying to, we're here because we want to improve policing. And whether it's, and some policies affect that more than others. The use of force policies are obviously some of the most important. And so really there's two processes, at least two processes at work. One is the APD policy process, and they essentially own this process. And it's as we're somewhat familiar, I think mostly familiar, that there's an OPA process. There's materials submitted to the before OPA. There's an OPA presentation, which is made by subject matter experts. From there, it goes to a review process where it's primarily a review that's made available to internal to APD through their Power DMS system. And then there's further comment and review. There's that comment and review, and then it goes as a rolled up draft to the PPRB. Then, in normal circumstances, that PPRB draft is a near final draft, and it's submitted to us for review and recommendations. And then we can make a recommendation to the chief, and we can also include that to the monitor. And that's where that's the part of our process that I think we've been focused on lately. But I really think that we need to look back and see what the process has been from the very beginning, and that is that we have an opportunity to participate in OPA and PPRB, and I think our role in that, we have a voting member from both the CPOA and the POB on both of those bodies, but we're also in the minority from, with respect to the total membership on that, on those boards. So where our process comes into play, and I think it's kind of, it's fortuitous, there's a copy of what I wrote up as a policy and procedure subcommittee operating procedure that's included with your minutes, and I didn't realize that would be in here, but it's kind of something that you can refer to, and it's also something that I think I've modified, and what I call created a triage system, which is to look at policies, which is mentioned in this review procedure or this operating procedure, but it's also something that in a practical sense we don't follow very well, and that's, I think, primarily because of resources. So the way that I have chosen to follow this is that the triage process consists of looking at whether there's a policy that we don't care about. It's APD's policy. It primarily deals with their internal operations. So I attend OPA meetings and we review that, and I listen to the review of the policy. And Director Harness and typically one of the Paul Scotchville attends those meetings as well. And I mentioned that's a good place to get some feel for what is going on and also have a chance for input. And there is a significant amount of input that's done at those, but it may, as far as we're concerned, at least this has been my approach, and we can explore whether that should change, but that can be where the input essentially is left. I mean, the APD can continue developing their process, because it is theirs. So that's sort of the first level of triage. The second level is one that, if there's a particular interest at this point in the OPA process, we can recommend that APD submit that or present that to our board, and that discussion occurs at that time, and it's up to APD to follow through if they want to do that. And then the third one, of course, is a CASA policy, and what we've asked and decided is that all CASA policies will come before the board as well as best they can. So that's kind of the process that exists. Every policy doesn't get quite as formal review before it gets here, and that's the way the process operates at the moment. But I just wanted to remind you that that really doesn't achieve the goal of policy recommendations, and there's still in training involved. All policies have to result in some way or another in training. Sometimes it's extensive, sometimes it's fairly minimal, depending on how wide the policy is. But in use of force policies, that's a significant factor. And then the final step is really a review of the process, and how does that, and what are the criteria that we use to review the process. And so I think that we have influence on this process. We have two kinds of influences, or what I call hard power and soft power. But hard power is an ordinance granted power, which says that we can make a recommendation to the chief, and he can judge whether he wants to accept that recommendation or not. But that's written into the ordinance. Our soft power is really the ability to influence the process so that APD will make changes that we suggest. And we do that by gaining credibility with APD. And so I think that being present in the process is one of the ways that we gain credibility. It shows that we're doing the work to try to understand how APD operates, and then take that, use that information to give back, credible sorts of recommendations. And a lot of that happens in sort of real time, engaging with APD. And I just wanted to point out that since the last regular POB meeting, I made a list of various PPRB, OPA meetings, our own policy meeting, and I've also included CPC meetings because there's another place to get public input. And I've been to 18 meetings since the last last regular POB meeting on August 9th. So I think there's another message here, and that is that we need some more help on the board, and we need resources to deal with this. But that's kind of where the process stands at the moment. So
I have a question.
The next, let's see, we decided the next meeting was September 20th, I believe. Is it next week? Are we going to? Right. What was our? Do you have that date?
September 27th.
27th. Thank you. Right. Right. Okay. That's all I have.
Now that we have a report on the process, our next meeting, we need an update on what you're actually working on, okay? On the actual pieces.
I have a list of.
Okay. So.
Right here.
Okay, so you make sure we all get that.
In all fairness, it has been predominantly 252 and that suite of policies and 352 that we've been kind of working on, just because there was such a mass confusion about that. So that's really where we've been. I don't think I'm out of turn in saying that. Do you all? Yeah.
Okay. Great.
I watched the policy and procedures meeting on YouTube, and I detected that there was, and you've just reconfirmed it with your comments, Dr. Cass, in that there was, I understand what you're saying about influence, but I don't think that, I think we would be rewriting the ordinance if we were not able to take a position on a policy, given all the community input we're asking for. And so I want to make sure and be another voice, because in your committee there was a difference of opinion about this point. The other point that I want to make clear is that your being on the PPRB and Ms. Director Harness being on the PPRB does not represent the entire board. It is perhaps the influence piece that you were talking about. But, you know, the board can only be represented by the board and by a vote of the board. So though you can gather information, as all committees do, and have discussions and make recommendations to this board, there is no, there's nothing but the board's opinion as a vote. I mean, that's the only way you can get the board's opinion. And so I want to make sure that we don't muddy those waters, that we're not unclear about what is the board and what is individuals, either from the staff or the board. And I think it's tied up with your influence versus position. And I understood you to say when in watching that meeting, and perhaps I misunderstood, but it seemed to me like you were saying we shouldn't be taking positions, that instead we should go this influence route. And I want to go on record as saying I disagree with that.
Okay. Joseph.
Chair Waits, board member Fine. I'm also. Chair Waits, board member Fine. I'm also on that committee. And in fact, the agenda item that we were discussing at the outset of the meeting, I think goes into that territory. So I'm going to just briefly recommend that we maybe hold those comments and that conversation until we get there. That way we don't have that way we use the time efficiently. I just don't want to have the conversation again over. Would that be okay?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
I just wanted to
I think this
give my
is,
feedback, that's all.
I believe this is the time for committee reports, and I think appropriate feedback would be given when, I don't think there's a feedback involved here.
Okay.
So.
Let's move forward to the case review subcommittee. Valerie?
Okay, we had our case review subcommittee on August the 28th, 2018 at 12 o'clock p.m. At our meeting, we had 18 cases, 17 administratively closed, and 1 was unfounded.
And I'd also like to mention that one of our cases, 053-18, this individual filed for a reconsideration, which was granted, and this will be held at our next CRC meeting on September the 25th at 1 o'clock. Thank you.
And what was that number again?
05318. And Director Harness, may I also mention, prior to this meeting, if you could make sure that everybody on the board can access this case still? I don't know if it's still in the available.
Chair Waits, Board Member St. John, certainly, I will update the request for extension, which was what was submitted, and I'll upload the letter as well.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Member St. John, I didn't quite hear that. Did you say it was case 153-18?
No, it was a 053-18.
053.
I circled the wrong one.
-18.
Where is
So it wasn't on this
Oh, it
past
didn't.
month's?
Yeah, it was last month.
It was last month's cases that you were reviewing, and
It's
somebody
just an
filed
appeal.
an
It's
appeal.
just she filed an appeal
Perfect.
and, within the 30-day
Yeah,
time frame.
Okay.
perfect. I just wanted to be clear.
So, yeah, okay, good. All righty, thank you.
So do you want to present?
All right,
these
let's
cases?
move into our discussion.
Update the use of force. Never mind.
Personnel Subcommittee, I'm sorry.
Well, there is no personnel subcommittee, there's me.
Okay.
So we need to.
Let me-
meet, and I think it would be really good.
Yeah, let me just state that I will join you on that committee.
And I will also join.
Is there anyone else that would like to? Hold on. Because you guys, you are already on 2 committees already. Yeah.
As
So-
is everyone, as
Yeah.
is
everybody.
So I want to make
May
sure.
May I
Sure.
explain what that's about? I had intended to do this just as part of the personnel topic and make this request at a later point, but the concern, and I think it's just a practice that we need to avoid, when we have this small of a board, we run into quorum issues for sure, and having the same 2 people that have the quorum, or 3 people, or whatever that number is, the quorum of the subcommittee on so many committees, I think is just a practice that we want to avoid. And that's, we can discuss that further, but
I
I'm
think,
sure you can see how that might cause some problems.
okay, I think we can discuss it, but I think it's also up to the individual. Do I have time? Yes, I do. I'm basically self-employed to a minimum.
Right.
So I think that it's okay for someone to go ahead and volunteer because they know if they can fit it into their schedule.
So it's not that, let's be clear, it's not that each of us would be on 3 committees, it's that we'd be on those 3 committees together.
Together.
That's the
And
problem.
it's
That's
not,
she's having.
you know,
That's
not
what
the
she's talking
2 of you necessarily, but any 2
just the
board
any
members or
2.
any 3
I
board
didn't
members, whatever would
even think of that.
constitute a quorum.
Okay.
So that it doesn't, if you've got a quorum of a committee, Member St. John, and that committee makes decisions that then come to the board, and the board makes decisions, it could conceivably come down to just a handful of people that are making decisions for the board.
It's one of the problems of having 6 board members.
Exactly.
Right.
It's one more reason why we
Right.
need more board members,
And
so.
That's why we're
Thank you,
pushing so
Dr.
hard
Cass.
for that. So with that being said, I will join with you, Joan.
Well, I could not be the person on it.
You could.
Well, no,
But
she's
so-
already in 2 committees and this would put her on 3. That's why I'm arguing. And-
But that's the point I was trying to clarify.
It's not the number.
But I'm already on 2 committees, so then I,
Well,
if
but
there's
the same
some-
is true, Chelsea, aren't you on, you're not on outreach, you're on case review, and so we wouldn't be the same.
Okay,
It's just
all right.
you and I are on
Okay.
3, would be on 3 together.
Right.
I got it.
Okay.
Okay, I understand that. But it
Okay.
doesn't have to be me that's on it.
Exactly. I mean, if Member St. John wanted, Member St. John wanted to be on the personnel committee with, Chair Waits and Member Cass, that would be acceptable, or, Member Van Deventer, like any other
Okay.
combination. That, the number of committees is not necessarily the point.
I understand that logic, so I don't think that we should assume that I should be, I have been on it from the beginning,
Okay.
but that doesn't mean I should.
I think, John Fine needs to be on this committee because of the history. And so I would, say, no.
I agree.
Okay.
I agree.
All
So
right,
if,
so
that gives you the 3?
Okay, we have 3 people. All
Thank
right,
you.
Thank you so much. Okay, let's move on to our discussions here. Up- Okay. Okay, great. Public involvement, prospective board members, do we have an update on that?
Yeah, so if you guys don't mind, I'm going to kind of lead the charge with this discussion. And part of it stems just for the community's awareness. Part of this stems from one of the projects that Outreach has been working on or attempting to work on. And that's just kind of the revamping of onboarding of new board members. It was not made clear to me when I joined this board how much work was involved, what was going to be expected, and the time commitment. And I think that sets us up for failure in having a board member stay for the duration of their 3-year term. And so we'll always have this revolving door. So one of the things that we wanted to do was work with Julian and his team at the City Council office when they have a prospective board member before they are confirmed by City Council. Members of the board would meet with them, introduce ourselves, introduce what it is that we do as a body, and kind of explain some of the pitfalls that they may find just scheduling and expectation-wise, and just try and set them up for success as best we can. That idea has kind of developed a little bit further in my mind, and so I wanted to bring this up to the board as a whole, because it's going to require that we vote on an ordinance change if we want to do this, and I'm really glad that we're having this conversation before that workshop session with City Council. I think one of the ways that we can avoid this lag in filling board member vacancies and having this is to get prospective board members buy-in. And in order to do that, we need to engage them, and they need to feel as though they're a part of the process. And so what I am recommending is that we ask Mr. Moya to determine a number, or maybe we help him to determine that number, of people that we have kind of already vetted, that are ready to become confirmed members of this board by City Council at any given time. So say it's a build to of 6 people. Those people can then join. This is where the ordinance changes come in. Those people could then join the committee level as voting members if we can get City Council to agree to this prospect. Have them become voting members. It solves a lot of problems, not the least of which is just their buy-in and getting them involved. They would then come to the board prepared. They'd know what some of the expectations are. They are not starting with no information on what we're currently working on at the time. But also when we have, or if we should ever have this situation that we find ourselves in now, we don't run into those problems like we were just talking about where the committee makeup has to be a little bit more closely monitored. I think that it just kind of solves a lot of problems that we're currently experiencing, and we can call that person up for the next month's board meeting because they've already been vetted and confirmed and are already voting members in some capacity of the work that we're doing. So that's my thoughts, and then opening it up for discussion among the board and seeing how we want to proceed as a whole.
Well, I have a comment if you all don't. One, to become a voting member, you have to go through the academy. So that would be difficult. If we haven't selected that person, sending through that process, I'm hoping you're saying going through that process, going through the academy, going through the whole process of becoming a member prior to being selected. Is that what you're saying?
They would have to go through that process to be confirmed to the board or to become a voting member of the board, but not necessarily, although it could be that we want it that way, to these subcommittees. I mean, this is a whole new concept. We can kind of design it the way that we in City Council might think it could be successful.
Okay.
They wouldn't actually be board members. They would be committee members, like board members in training, kind of.
Excuse,
That's-
if I can,
Yeah.
I think we've had some, the our legal advisor has weighed in that we don't need all the training in order to become, some aspect of, a voting board member. And so I think we could get clarification on that, if to answer your question, because I think it's an important question.
Chair Member Waits, Board Member Cass, Dr. Cass, excuse me. Yes, so in looking at what the policies and procedures are for the Police Oversight Board in connection with what the ordinance provides for training for voting on the board as a board member, what I have determined is that in order for a newly appointed Police Oversight Board member to vote, they have to complete what's just been defined as an orientation, which means being trained by the CPOA staff or legal regarding APD rules, policies, and procedures, and they have to attend at least one Police Oversight Board meeting as an observer. At that point, then, they are eligible to vote. While they might not be in compliance with all of the other requirements for the Police Oversight Board, which requires all of the training that Chair Member Waits, I believe you're talking about in the discussion, that is not a voting requirement. It is a compliance requirement for board members.
Okay, so they could serve on that subcommittee as a voting.
They can't today. It would require an ordinance change, but it's
Okay.
something that I would like to explore, and I would like this body to explore. The other thing that I think would be good, as I'm just kind of looking out, is if we can get some CPC members to be a part of that. They would have gone through the police academy in theory, right? Because that's a requirement for them as well. But opening it up, and this came months ago originally, opening it up to additional members of the community, I think can only do good because it provides more perspectives rather than just our own kind of self-guiding. Anyway, I think there's a lot of positives to that, but again, I'm one voice,
Yeah.
and it's got to come.
No,
That decision has to come from the board.
I agree with it. It's thinking outside of the box. I mean,
Yeah.
that definitely is something that we could consider. I know at one time we did consider recruiting from the CPCs, which I think is a great idea because one, they've gone through the academy, and that eliminates that part of it, and
I'm just a reality check. We have city councilors that are not sure we need 9. So I think this is a great subject, as you said, for the study session. We should get a feel for where they're at, because they may not want this 6 people here, let alone, they may not have a different idea in mind. So let's find out but I think it's a good thing to ask.
Absolutely, and I think that maybe there's a little bit of, I think maybe we should have an idea of if we even want to pursue that before we take it to them, but again.
We had asked, just so you know the history of that, we had asked Julian to have potential pre-vetted folks in waiting, like an alternate kind of thing. We had brought that idea up. I don't believe we got any feedback on it.
no, not at all. I think it's a great idea.
I do
think we
too.
need to pursue it. Yeah, Valen? Yeah. Any other comment? Any other thought on that thought?
No, I think, like you said, it's a great idea, but let's just kind of discuss it later when we figure out what's going to happen. Like she said, how many we're going to have.
And I can certainly appreciate that, because I know things are kind of topsy-turvy and a little chaotic right now. But I think that it's also designed, or at least the most recent iteration of this in my mind, is designed to kind of combat what the problems are that we're experiencing now.
Well, and an appreciation for the amount of, I've never volunteered for anything that required this much time, ever. And I've spent my life being a volunteer, so in addition to working. So I think that it's a good thing for the city council to want to know more about what we're doing, because they will see with their own eyes how much there is. And they may be more amenable after that.
I would suggest that we pursue that a little further.
How do we want to pursue it? I'm happy to take this forever. I don't like, let me just say, kind of doing the thing where we talk about forever and we never
No,
get anywhere,
I-
so.
Well, I thought your idea was concrete, but when you said bring it to the work study, I think
Okay, so that's the next step.
that to me would be the
Yeah,
next,
that's
that
good
makes
idea.
sense.
Yeah.
Do we as a board feel comfortable with doing that? I don't want it to be my idea. I would like for the board to say, this is something that we want to pursue and the next step
Well,
is
yeah.
city council, or
Get their feedback on
just
it.
get their feedback first before we decide if it's something we
Right.
want to pursue.
I think at the study session, we might need to be, I think that we might need to be taking the temperature of the city council in regards to the composition of the board, understanding what's underlying some of the things that are happening. And so I wouldn't want, I'm definitely happy to explore that idea, but I wouldn't want to crowd out the conversation with new ideas, because I think we need to kind of be doing some intel at that time. And so I think it might be wise of us to attend the study session. And then once we have information, I think that pertains to this topic, then we place it on the agenda as a discussion item and figure out what types of motions we might want to make at the meeting subsequent to the study session.
I think what we know already is that the city council wants to have a more frequent relationship with us, and with more information coming to them. What form that takes and how that works is the subject of the study group. But I think it's safe to say this study group isn't the beginning and the end, that this is the setup for how that's going to work moving forward. And I just say that we bring it with us on that journey.
Okay. Any other discussion on this topic? All right, let's move on.
Update.
Okay, we're going to have an update on use of force. Any updates from the committee?
I believe this is, Chair Waits, I believe this is my agenda item. So I thought that it was necessary to clean up what happened on the board with 252, just do some brief housekeeping. And so this will relate to what Board Member Fine was bringing up earlier in the Policy and Procedure Subcommittee update. So just briefly, I think that what we need to do, so we had, where do I start here? Okay, so on 252 came to us at our June meeting, and we, several of us made comments specifically regarding this controversial Graham language that appears in the use of force suite. It was my understanding at that time, even though we did not take an official vote, that we had a posture and a position when it came to that language. And I think that I feel that for all intents and purposes, what is a de facto type of position, I think that's what we sort of put out there. I think that's the same for all intents and purposes as an official position that could happen through a vote. However, I don't think everyone sees it the same way. And so I think to clean up the issue, what we need to do this evening is vote on where we stand on the Graham language. That way we just tidy this thing up, because what happened was that we had our first meeting. I made numerous comments. Everyone else made comments in a similar vein. Most of us thought that was our position. And then later on, we came to learn at a special meeting that Dr. Cass and Director Harness had voted on the policies in a way that we felt was contrary to the position we were setting. And so I think a part of that problem is the fact that we did not formalize things through a motion. And so I would like to do that this evening. And so the comments that I made on 252 were that generally we oppose the appearance of Graham language within the use of force policy. So I move that we formally, as a board, hold the position when it comes to the use of force suite that we oppose Graham language appearing within that policy.
Okay.
I second your motion.
Yeah.
Okay,
And I have a question.
okay. All in favor?
So we have to have the discussion first.
Oh, before you vote?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, we had to close that motion out.
No. Okay, so,
please.
so my question is that I would just amend the motion, and I would make this suggestion to you, that one of the things that I thought we agreed to was that Graham versus Connor is part of the court system and would not be included, doesn't necessarily have to be in our policy. There was no reason for it to be in, and when we first got it, we didn't see that. The second thing that I heard frequently over and over was it's confusing. And I think you made this point very well, that if you have a, de-escalation policy and you have Graham versus Connor, you're operating on two different things. And one of the stated purposes that the commander talked to us about in that first meeting on 252 was to make sure that the policies were directive and that they were clear, that they were to reduce confusion. And so I think those are the two reasons why I would be in favor of the Graham language not being in 252 for those two reasons. And I wonder if you're interested in putting reasons or if you'd prefer not to put reasons in there.
I would, and let me make sure I was clear that this motion has to pertain to the entire use of force suite.
Oh, okay.
But I don't necessarily want to put, bullet point arguments into this motion, because I feel like we could, I don't know, have like a very extremely lengthy debate if we wanted to talk about all of the supporting reasons why Graham is not favorable. I think that, we heard multiple arguments, and I think you would have your reasons, for example, for supporting my motion, and other people could have those plus others, minus some, plus more,
So it's just
depending.
an up, down, yes, no vote on Graham versus Connor.
Graham versus Connor's appearance in the use of force suite and any language derived therefrom.
Okay, I'm good with that.
Any other comments?
Just read it on my parade.
Go ahead.
I'm not sure what stage this is, but I would like to suggest that if we do this, that we do it according to our own procedures and conduct the discussion in that way. And I believe the discussion calls for us to be able to make a statement in turn around the board and not enter into crosstalk among the board. And then after every board member has had a chance to speak, we can go for a second round, I believe that's allowed. And then that ends the discussion. But I think that there's, I would like to, I'm happy to make a statement, and I want to make a statement. So, all right. So I think that it's not. First of all, I'd like to give you some background on the sense of the PPRB vote, and that is I see a different purpose for having a PPRB vote, and that is that it moves the policy forward so that it can be so that all the bodies, all the entities that deal with this policy have a chance to make comments and to continue to act on the policy. And it's not approval of the policy at the PPRB is not approval of the policy, but it's an approval of the desire to move this on in the process. And so when you have a policy as complicated as 252, where there's a large number of stakeholders involved, you can't have all sides represented in this without having someone ultimately make a decision as to what's going to be in the policy and what's not going to be in the policy. In the case of the Graham language, I think this is a decision that's well above anything that we have a significant impact on. It's a Supreme Court decided case, and and if you go through, as I was referring to earlier, if you take this to the very end, you're going to have this decided. You're going to train. The objections have been that you train to it, and or that training to it's confusing. But before you get to that point, even the court is going to. First of all, I think the union has gone on record that they would file a suit in order to maintain Graham language in the policy. If that happens, this becomes a court issue, and to think that a federal judge would rule against or would exclude Graham language from a policy from a case that's been decided at the Supreme Court, I think is a pretty remote possibility. So for us to weigh in on this, we can certainly weigh in and say we are opposed to having Graham language in here, but to what end is the question. I don't think it moves the policy or the process of getting a policy that then needs to be trained to in place. And so addressing the issue of training, I think it's selling APD a little bit short to think that they can't train to a policy where there's some ambiguity. And I think that happens, but I think they're capable of doing that. And I think that they've thought about this. So I think they're capable of moving this forward, and ultimately it's going to be a decision that gets made at a higher level. And in the meantime, if we want to weigh in that we don't like it, that's fine. But I think that it doesn't result in anything good that comes, that's added to the policy. So that's my statement.
I have a question. When they take that vote, is that a majority vote, or how is that?
Yes,
So
PPRB is a majority vote.
So if you voted and Dr. Harness or Director Harness voted no, that wouldn't stop that process, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So I think what we're trying to do tonight is get a position. This is the board's position. And it's a single vote of yes or no, this is our position, and that's where we want to be tonight, okay? And in the future. This is what we want to do, and you are representing us. You're part of our board, okay? And we would expect when you vote, you're voting for us because you're voting for the board. Now, trying to move it forward is not the answer, or whether the union's going to take this to court is not the answer. This is our position as a board member, okay? So, all right, so that's my comment. All right.
I have to agree with that. I think that whether or not our position would have stopped the process is not actually the point of this exercise. And you all know, and I have made it abundantly clear, that my opinion as far as a member of this body is that I will vote in the manner which our participants have voiced their opinions. I think that we are here to represent the people of Albuquerque. I don't think we are here to represent ourselves. And so when we take this vote in a little bit, my vote will be the way that the community spoke at the multiple opportunities that they had to voice their opinions that were available to anybody and everybody who would have come anyway. I mean, everybody had the same opportunity regardless of which side of the fence they were on with regards to the Graham language. The people that did come overwhelmingly wanted the Graham language left out of the policy. So whether or not I believe that to be the right way to go, it will not affect the way that I vote on this. Secondarily, and it's a separate issue, I am not sure, I think it's something that we need to discuss, as far as Dr. Cass or anybody else who may attend from the board voting at a PPRB vote, I think that that is very black and white. They are representing the POB. I am not sure that the same holds true for Director Harness, because he is representing the CPOA, although the argument could be made that he should fall in lockstep with the board's decision. But I think that that's a separate topic that we need to kind of flesh out a little bit. So there's my 2 cents.
Valerie?
The only thing, I mean, I agree with everything you said, and I was thinking about this earlier today, and I think that board member Cass, when he goes to the PPRB, he is representing us. And I did feel kind of betrayed that he voted against something that we all talked about and we all felt passionately about. So I don't know if this is the time or the place, but I'm going to recommend from that when he goes to the PPRB and represents us, that he comes back and gives his report on the cases and how he voted. Because we need to know how he's representing.
Okay. Second round.
So I just wanted to say quickly that this agenda item has multiple parts. So after we take a vote on this, I am going to make another motion regarding how the POB and the CPOA are to represent us at PPRB. So we get there, but it's just, I just separated it out because I thought it was a little bit distinct.
Dr. Cass?
Yeah, I think from a practical sense, I haven't heard the proposal that works. First of all, I mean, this is a position sort of representing. I agree. I represent the PPRB at these meetings, but in order to know what the PPRB or what the board feels about a particular issue at a PPRB meeting requires that you do a review before this gets to the PPRB meeting and make a decision. There's 7 days between OPA and the PPRB meeting. I don't believe that's time for this board to call a special session on every issue that's going to be brought up at the PPRB. And I think there's been way too much importance attached to a vote at the PPRB in terms of whether that is is making the decision on behalf of the board to support a policy or to not support a policy. It's simply a way of moving this policy forward in the process. I don't believe that was actually the issue of this motion, but it was more about whether the Graham language itself should be in the policy. Well, it's, you know, I volunteered this information as an explanation for what I thought was an important or a not important reason to go ahead and let this policy go on, because it's a policy that's going to be debated at a higher level, and we have only recommendation power.
I think that that's just beside the point. I have no reason to believe that we would not end up in the exact same position that we're going to be in, that the Graham language is going to have that fight out between the monitor and the courts, and the monitor will make the recommendation. I believe right now that the monitor's recommendation is going to fall pretty close to where we left it, and then it's going to fall ultimately to Judge Brack. I think that the point of this discussion and this exercise is how we want to be represented at PPRB by whomever that person is. I also don't know that it's going to come up again just because this was an exceptional circumstance. The way that 352 flowed kind of backwards. 252, yes. The way that it kind of went backwards through the 352 channel, I think is what prompted this and why we have feelings of, I won't say my feelings are of betrayal, but that we had a position that was not reflected at PPRB. If we're going to have a voice at the table, then I think we need to have a voice at the table and let the process work the way that it's supposed to. Let the votes be counted, whether we agree with them or not. Live with that decision. It just didn't work that way this way for a lot of reasons. And I think that this is just one area that we can fix. I think that Dr. Cass makes an excellent point. We're only gonna have the 7-day time frame between OPA and PPRB, and we can't do business via email, so that poses a problem. And I don't think quickly enough on my feet to even begin to come up with a solution for that, other than maybe we have kind of a tentative agenda of what policies are coming and that we can kind of review ahead of time before they even get to OPA, which might buy us some time, but I don't know how much.
In this particular instance, you're right, we put the horse before the cart, and that was the problem. But Dr. Cass brings up a very good point. If we're to get it after PPRB, if we're to get it after PPRB, the PPRB will have met, okay? So it seems to me that who's ever sitting in the chair of the policy committee, or whoever is voting on PPRB on behalf of the board, is obligated to come to us after the PPRB vote and say, if we're following 352, this is what we were presented, this is what you're presented with, this is how we voted. Here I voted, here's how he voted, and why, you know? I would say only that to move the process along doesn't do it for me at all. I understand that logic, I just don't agree with it. And I think that's not what I signed up for. I think I am here to represent the community, and so are we all. So that's my comment.
Last and final time? Or, well, one more time, I'm sorry. Do you have a comment?
No.
Okay.
I would just, I would move a vote on the main question at this time. So again, a reiteration of my motion is that the board at this time take an official posture of being opposed to Graham language appearing in the use of force suite.
And I second that motion.
Okay. Any other
You want a roll call?
comment?
No, just call the vote.
Let's just get a roll call vote on that.
Okay, I vote yes.
I abstain.
Based on the commentary that we've had here, I vote yes.
Okay. I vote yes.
I vote yes.
I vote yes.
Okay. One's abstain.
Chair Waits, can I move to the next subplot here? So like Chantal said, what happened here hopefully isn't going to happen often because it was a reversion of 352 for the PPRB vote to occur after our POB airing of the policy. So hopefully we don't run into this, but since we have run into it, and again, just to tidy this up, I would also make a motion that any PPRB votes by the CPOA and the POB must not contradict the stated positions of the board, whether they be de facto or formal.
Second.
Okay.
Second. Lawyered.
Any
Discussion?
discussion?
I have a discussion about that. I think there is no such thing as a de facto position for this board. There's only one way that action is taken by this board, and that is by a majority vote on an issue. And that majority vote has to follow a discussion, a motion and a discussion. And to say that we had a de facto position on the earlier question is pretty far-reaching in my view. I believe that meeting was hijacked, and we were way off base in terms of what we discussed, and it was not done according to our own rules. So to create these positions, which whatever we call them, based upon a faulty process that we refuse to follow, I think is setting us up to just for chaos, and I think that's what this proposal is.
Just for clarification, are you talking about the special board meeting or the June board meeting where 252 was originally presented?
I wasn't at the I wasn't at the June board meeting. I was at the special meeting where witnesses were hijacked before the discussion was.
Okay.
You know.
So the fact that you were not, I guess I can understand the fact that you were not at the board meeting, although there are ways to have become aware of what the board's position or de facto position or whatever semantical term we want to use, for the idea that the board very clearly argued one point that was not represented at PPRB, and the community argued that same point and it was not represented at PPRB. That's one thing, and I can sort of, okay. The issue, just to kind of go back and not have this come up again, the issue that we were talking about not having enough time, and I said I don't think quickly enough on my feet, perhaps the solution is that the Policy and Procedure Committee meets in that 7-day window to discuss any policies, and then you have at least more than one voice that's represented at PPRB, and the committee as a whole is then accountable to the board. And I think that one of my very early board meetings talking about this very thing, that was kind of the assumption, but I'd have to go back and review that. But I think that that's one way that we can kind of get more board input into that process.
I would say that having been part of the process of creating how this would happen and how we would do it, the arguments we made and all the places the city was willing to put our board as a whole into that process, we argued very strenuously for being at the end so that we could see what was accomplished, that we weren't looking at draft 1 instead of draft 20. And that is the part that 352 represents, finally. The fact that it was cattywampus this time is a problem, and hopefully not a problem we'll have again. But with 352 the way it is, I have no problem with Director Harness and whoever's representing the board voting, because at that point we won't have seen it, okay? And say what, but my expectation is that they then come to us after it goes through PPRB and tell us why they voted the way they did and give us their arguments about that. And that's part of the conversation we have as we reach our final decision about how that works. Subsequently, everybody on the board, no matter what if something votes to pass, everybody carries that bucket, you know. So to my way of thinking, we hopefully will not get in that situation again, and we will have, if we follow 352, we will be the last stop on that train.
Well, I agree with some of what Joanne is saying, but I think to tell them that they have to vote with us, especially Director Harness, I think it's pushing it. Perhaps we should maybe leave him out of that motion and just say that whoever represents the board, that, as an individual, that he has to vote what we have discussed and what we have voted on. If not, then he also has the options to abstain. And let's keep us separately.
Yes.
Can you repeat that motion again?
Sure, several things here. The motion was that we, the PPRB votes by the CPOA and by the POB should not contradict the stated positions of the board. I can amend it to remove de facto. I can amend it so that I'm only talking about formally stated positions here. And I agree with Board Member Galloway that this shouldn't come up too often because normally it happens in reverse. But in the event that it goes in this order again for some other policy of significant substance to us, that this doesn't get repeated, and that's the point of this motion. I do believe that the CPOA is the POB and the CPOA are one entity. We're not separate entities. I mean, that is exactly why, we're having this issue with the IPRA stuff. That director, we don't have our own records custodian because we're one entity with the POB. And so it doesn't make any sort of sense to me that, the CPOA would be voting differently than the POB really ever. And so, usually when the CPOA and the POB are voting at PPRB, we will not have seen that policy. That will be what's the normal way it happens. And I don't think that we can, I don't think as a practical matter, because there are hundreds of policies and PPRB and POB or OPA meetings every week, that we can realistically develop any sort of procedure that gets every policy to us before our PMP chair and Director Harness are going to vote on it. I don't think that's a practical thing to do. I am only suggesting, my motion is limited to simply that in the instance that the board has already taken a position on an issue, the policy thereafter moves to PPRB, that we do not contradict ourselves like we did this time.
Yes.
So it really is really limited. It's not really broad. It doesn't mean that every single PPRB vote has to get somehow vetted or okayed by us. As a practical matter, that will not work. But I just don't want it to go like this again.
It's also great, I'm sorry, can I speak? Are we going in? I'm sorry. I didn't.
Do you have any, Dr. Cass, do you have any comment?
Well, I have a question, and that is, what constitutes a board position?
A vote.
Did we have a vote on 252?
We're talking about the future, though.
No,
Yeah,
we're
we
talking
didn't,
about, no,
and that
we,
is
we're,
what
no,
I'm
we're talking
addressing.
we're talking about a particular issue where I voted to forward this policy at PPRB. That issue was 252. The stated position has been that there was a board position on this. I would like you to look at your minutes and show me where that board position was formed.
Excuse me, but the way that I'm understanding, I'm sorry.
We gotta follow the procedure. So I disagree that this issue, that this vote that Chelsea is calling for, that Member Van Deventer is calling for, is trying to undo something. I think that the problem happened, and now we have to figure out how we don't let it happen again in the future. And that's what this vote is about. How do we move forward so that this does not repeat? What's done is done. I also think that pending after we do this vote, that I'm going to suggest that we do one for when it's not a special circumstance like this, so that we do get the, I don't feel comfortable. I don't feel comfortable saying that the POB and the CPOA should be voting in tandem, that we are one entity. I don't feel comfortable saying that 100% of the time, and that's my position. I think that Director Harness leads a team of people that we don't interact with almost at all, and that they have valuable things to say as well. So I'm not sold yet that we are one. And so I would like to say that for future normal circumstances that we separate it out, because I may be the lone voice in that, and the motion will still carry, that the CPOA would vote in the same manner as the POB. So I'm going to ask for that. I'm comfortable being the only one out on that limb. I also think that, oh Lord, please come back to me, the one more thing. It's gone. Gone.
Okay.
I've spent a lot of time on staffs and on boards, and I think that there's no question that it's one entity. I've always had a problem with the POB being named something other than the CPOA Board of Directors. It is the governing body for the CPOA. So you set up a situation. What I do think is that Director Harness is an issue expert on this. He goes to all the meetings. He hears all the information. So I think he is an issue expert. And in this case, no matter who holds Dr. Cass's position, that person serves for us as an issue expert, having gone to all those meetings. So I think they make their best vote based on 352. They make their best vote. They come to us. They tell us. Because at that point, now we have input as a board. That's what we asked for. That's what we wanted 352 to do. So unless the board has taken a position prior to them casting that vote. They make their vote and then they come here with that information and say, we voted this way because. Doesn't hold the board to that vote, and it doesn't represent the board's vote. It's just a vote on the PPRB.
I agree.
Well, I feel at this point, I understand that we're the same entity. But I do think that the person that sits on our board has to represent us. He represents us. And when he goes out there and votes, I thought he was holding what our decisions we made when he went out there and voted. But, you know, I've learned, of course, not. And I don't know if we need to attend the meetings or like I said.
We can't attend the meetings,
come
which would be a
back.
quorum.
We'll just take turns or come back. But I do agree with the motion that's on the table now.
Okay. Before we
Director Harness has been asking to be addressed, Chair Waits.
Go right ahead.
Chair Waits, Honorable Board, I guess I'm having trouble with what the problem is. Irregardless of the vote at PPRB, the policy is then presented and given to the board for review and comment, and 30 days to do so. Irregardless of however the vote goes. A PPRB vote is not an approval of a policy. It is an approval to move it on in the process. I can't emphasize that enough. Beyond that, if the board wants to have a position on a policy for PPRB, fine, but vote on it so that there's an actual stated policy. I cannot decide based upon a discussion, no matter how heated and no matter how vociferous, what the official board's position is without the board taking a vote and establishing the position. Beyond that, I stand by my vote to move the policy forward. You still received it, and then we're able to say we don't like the reinsertion of the gram, and all of those comments were made, those comments were brought forward to the monitor. On the 18th, PPRB 2-20 hostage suicidal barricade, 2-23 use of canine, 2-25 bomb threats, 2-70 execution of search warrant, 6-7 EOD unit, and 6-9 canine unit. That's next Tuesday.
Is that a question?
That's PPRB.
Okay.
So.
And you tell us that why?
To give us an idea of the work that we're putting on ourselves.
The motion is that you want me to go there with a position on how to vote on those policies.
No, that's not what I said.
That's not the motion.
It
Okay.
sort of, but not, it's not actually.
Okay. Board member, Dr. Cass, I'm finding it really, okay, no, actually first, Director Harness, when you guys voted on 252 at PPRB, you did not give us that policy. We didn't get it, I didn't have it, I checked my email very thoroughly. I never received nor knew about what you voted on at that meeting, at the PPRB meeting that occurred after our June meeting. So it's not true that we got it. Further, we had several meetings after, and no one informed us about that we had voted on 252 and that language was in there. I came to discover what had happened because a community member, Robbie Heckman, came up, made public comment, and he informed that the Graham language was back in the policy. At that time, I turned to Dr. Cass and asked him if he knew about it, and he said no, which I think must have been not true, because later on I learned that you guys had recently voted on it a month prior. So it wouldn't be fair to say that the information has been shared, and that is what Board Member Fine is mostly emphasizing that we need to do, is to share the information to avoid these types of scenarios. And, you know, Dr. Cass, you've made a lot of statements about how we need to follow our own procedure, we need to follow our own procedure, we need to follow our own procedure. Our procedure doesn't allow you to abstain from a vote. And maybe I should remind you that prior to the June meeting, you and I discussed the policy that was coming, discussed the Graham language, discussed our shared opposition to it. You asked me to make comments to that effect. I made comments to that effect. You called me when you got back from your trip and said that you appreciated the work that I had done, which I could not view as anything but an endorsement and an indicator that you would not in any way contradict those conversations later on. So I think that, you know, the position that you're taking tonight, this prevaricating type of position, is also disingenuous. I'm not up here trying to create a ton of controversy. All I'm up here trying to do is to say, everyone on this board felt that we had taken a position on Graham. We now realize that the fact that we didn't formalize it was problematic. We all agree. That is why we've just taken a vote and discussed that we should take votes in the future. I agree with Director Harness. If he has no vote, then we can't expect him really necessarily to vote in accordance with what we've done. And he didn't do so. And so now I'm trying to correct that problem by making such a motion that in the event that we have that the POB and the CPOA, again one entity, have that information, if they have it, if that's how the process went for that particular policy, then please do not contradict it. It's just a housekeeping and cleaning up and tidying up of what has happened to make sure that we don't get in that bind again. Okay. That's it.
May I? So again, just for clarification, the motion right now as it stands is that if we were in this situation again, where PPRB happens after the board has brought a policy, that position, and as the motion stands, that the board member who is holding that voting position at PPRB and the executive director of the CPOA in that circumstance would not vote against what the board's position will be, because we will have taken a vote. I will add that I do think that it is incumbent upon the committee chair for policy and procedure to ensure that a vote has taken place, so that they know how that representative at PPRB will vote.
But a subcommittee can't vote for the entire board.
Nor can two people.
No. Again, this motion that is on the table right now is that if we find ourselves in the position where the board has voted that the executive director of the CPOA and the representative of the POB at PPRB will not contradict the vote of the board. Anything else beyond that, anything that would follow 352 has not yet been discussed. Correct?
Yes.
That is your motion.
Absolutely.
Point of order, I'd like to remind the members that attacks on and comments directed to other members of the board are not permitted. I'd like to have a ruling from our parliamentarian. If you would look at our rules of policy and procedure.
Chairman Waits, Board Member Dr. Cass, I will start by saying that the rules require a yes or no vote unless there has been a disqualification because of a conflict by the policies under the policies and procedures. Just a point of clarification. So you can vote yes or no, or you can choose to disqualify yourself due to a conflict. So that just as a point of clarification. With regard to discussion, under debate, it's policy section 7. There are quite a few provisions of it. I'll just read them to remind everyone what they say. A, any board member wishing to speak, debate, make a motion, submit a report, or conduct other business shall address the chairperson and shall not proceed further until recognized by the chairperson. Section B, if two or more board members seek recognition at the same time, the chairperson shall name the one who shall speak first. Subsection C, the board member who sponsors a motion shall have the privilege of opening and closing debate. A board member may direct an inquiry and receive a response without yielding the floor. D, no board member shall be permitted to speak more than once on any motion until every board member desiring to be heard has been allowed to speak, nor shall any board member except the sponsor of the motion speak more than a total of 10 minutes on any motion. E, no board member shall be interrupted when speaking, nor shall any motion be in order until the board member has concluded. And finally, F, no question shall be asked of the board member except those directed through the chairperson with the consent of the board member. I believe that answers your question, Dr. Cass, but if there's additional information from the policies and procedures, I'm happy to
Would you
help.
clarify what disqualification on a vote is? Is that the same as an abstention?
The policy just says voting shall be in the form of a yes or a no. Any action on a question is lost by a tie vote. Every board member who is within the room shall vote upon a question, except those who have disqualified themselves due to a conflict of interest. B, however, says a board member shall be allowed to change his or her vote, but only before the result has been announced. Are there any other questions about the policies and procedures?
So does that mean that my vote is not appropriate? I mean, is it given that is it too late to change the vote? If the rules insist that I vote and I abstained, does that beg the question? I mean, do I still, can I change the vote now and be on record? I don't mind being on record, but I'd just like to know if this is allowed by the procedures.
Chair member.
Can we correct the situation is essentially my question.
Thank you. Chairperson, Dr. Cass, I believe that at this point it would be up to the chairman to determine whether or not that vote should be redone, given the fact that it had already passed. And at that point, under the policies and procedures, because it has already passed, technically, I believe that the chair would need to recall the vote, if you will, to correct the abstention unless there was a conflict that you would like to disqualify yourself from the vote.
Is there? Okay, let's do this. There's two things that we need to do real quick here. One, we're going to do a recall vote, okay, on the previous motion. And can we restate that motion? Does anyone have that documented, or I didn't? Chelsea, can you remember your?
The previous motion?
Yes.
You would like me to restate it?
Yes, we're going to do a recall.
The one we voted on, yes. Okay. That motion was that the board take a position opposing Graham language in the use of force suite.
Okay. Can I get a second? Okay. All in favor? Vote aye.
Want to do roll call?
No. It's just a yes and no vote. So that's a roll call vote.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
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 Okay. 4-1. Okay. Now, let's end this discussion, unless anyone has something that's really 5-1 is our vote. Has anything that's really pressing? Let's conclude this discussion.
Okay, but
with the motion.
We did have the other outstanding motion that we need to vote on.
Yes.
Right, I think that's
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
Sorry.
So with that motion, that's PPRB vote should not state the position, our position. Is that? Can you restate that motion?
Okay.
So I get it right.
The second motion, on which we have not yet voted, would be that in the event that the board has taken a position formally through a vote on policy, that the POBs and CPOA's PPRB vote cannot contradict that position.
Okay. Okay, we have a motion and second. And let's take a verbal vote, a yes or no vote on that, starting with you.
Yes.
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 Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. That's 6-0. Now, let me just make this comment. I think out of all of the discussion, what has come out of this is that we need to have you all communicate to us what you voted on. It's not whether you voted yes or no on any situation. The information needs to come back to the board. And Dr. Cass, that's what I'm asking you to do on any situation. Just bring the information back to us, and we'll move forward.
And as a matter, I'd like to get some clarification on that.
Well, the clarification is that if you make a vote, just report, doing your normal report, that this is what I voted on in PPRB. It's not anything more technical than that. Just communicate to us what you.
And
what
at
you
what
voted
time does this need to be communicated? I mean, there's no provision here for the resources to be made available to do this.
Well, we're not asking you to do
Well-
anything other than to report back to us.
Okay, what I'm
votes-
asking is what are you asking to do? I mean,
During your committee report.
You do a committee report. That's the perfect time to give that information to us. It's a perfect time for us to discuss things that came about.
May I?
Okay.
I think that holds true, so sorry. I think that holds true for all committees. I don't think that this is, again, I don't think this is a Dr. Cass or a Director Harness specific thing.
Right.
I think we need to look at this as the process for the positions.
Okay.
And so I think every committee that may be in a position needs to report, every committee chair or everybody who is on a voting position outside of this board but representing this board needs to report back to the board the work that they have done, and if a vote was taken, how they voted and why. And I think that happens in the committee, in the board committee report.
And that's what I was trying to state. It's not a personal thing with you, Dr. Cass. Hold on, let me finish, okay?
Yeah.
It's not personal. I think we do ourselves a better service, and we can communicate the things that we're working on during that time when you're giving your report. That's all I'm asking you to do, or asking anyone to do, as Vice Chair Chantel said. So it's nothing personal. Please don't take it personal. I'm just saying let's do a better job and how we communicate things on the board.
No, I can get past the personal, but I would like to know what you expect in terms of a report.
Okay, I'll send you an email on the expectations.
I think it's just simply that if you vote on something, you come back to the board saying, if somebody votes on something, that we come back to the board saying, this is how I voted.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
think it's just that simple.
Let's move forward. Okay. Let's move this forward.
Hear from Director Harness.
Chair Waits, Honorable Board, every policy as it moves forward out of PPRB is being directly emailed to you.
Okay. What we're asking, Dr. Harness, I mean, why do I keep wanting to call you Dr. Harness?
I've been called a doctor earlier.
Okay. Director Harness, all I'm stating is we need to do a better job communicating what we're doing. You know, I'm not, I think we can do better reports, communicate better to the board, and that's what we need to do. So I understand. I get those reports. I think we all get them, and you know, it's up to us to read them and regress it. Or digress. Okay, let's move forward. Let's take a break. How about if we take a break to say a 10-minute break to 8:30, okay? And come back and conclude this. Can I get a motion to?
We only have the cases, that's it, that's all we have.
No,
We don't, we have a closed session.
We got a closed session.
Oh, no, okay.
So I need to take a break. So can I get a motion to?
I move that we take a 10-minute break.
All in favor?
Aye.